Hello, good evening. We're going to be starting our workshop for this meeting. And we'll be discussing lodging houses and recovery houses. And if you two could please introduce yourself and then please proceed.
Sure. David Hediger, Director of Planning and Code Enforcement.
I am Louis LaChance. I'm the Health Inspector and Code Enforcement Officer.
So I asked Louis to join me this evening because he's kind of our man on the lines with respect to inspecting all licensed establishments, whether they're eating and drinking establishments, hotels, motels, inns, lodging houses, those types of establishments. So this will be somewhat of a tag team approach here as far as some of the new developments that have occurred at the state level and how they're impacting Lewiston, and looking to you folks for some direction. So bottom line is we're looking for some direction as to whether or not we want to continue to license lodging houses. The state made some changes back in 2021 with respect to their definition of lodging houses. From the state's perspective, a lodging house is a hotel, motel, inn. The memo that I provided you provides the definition that they've adopted of, I guess, particular interest is that a lodging place from the state's perspective is a facility that provides stays that are temporary in nature and consists of fewer than 183 days in an aggregate year. So if you are staying at a hotel, motel, inn for less than 183 days a year, life is good, you're still licensed by the state, and you would be licensed by the municipality. We have delegated review authority from Department of Health and Human Services to license these establishments. Louis is that agent on behalf of the state to inspect those types of facilities. And Louis can get into some of the issues that he sees at these types of establishments and the licensing that's around those. So because the state is looking to get out of the lodging house, and this will get confusing because we talk about lodging places from the state's perspective is hotel, motels, inns. But then we also think of lodging houses as maybe transient housing where there's just a bedroom with maybe, a chair in it or something, and they're sharing bathroom or kitchen facilities down the hallway. Quite frankly, the type of establishments that one of our counselors operates, that type of lodging house. So we have lodging houses, we have lodging places, we have hotel, motel, inns. You're going to see that we want to make some changes just from a definition perspective to clean that up. If we continue to, the question is whether or not we want to license, I'm going to call them rooming houses to try to make a differentiation, right? So we have hotels, motels, inns. We continue to license those. The state wants to continue to license those. Louis will continue to inspect those on behalf of the state. The rooming house type establishments that the state no longer wants to license, those establishments where we have people staying for more than 183 days. Do we want to continue to regulate those in Lewiston? The way our ordinance is written right now, we would require those to be inspected to the same standards as a hotel, motel, inn. They'll never pass. The expectations are much different for a hotel, motel, inn than a rooming house type of establishment. And again, Louis can chime in as to what those standards are here at some point. So bottom line is we have an ordinance that regulates state standards that would apply to all these types of establishments. It probably doesn't make sense to hold all these establishments to the same standards where we're not going to regulate the hotel, motel, inn, or do we want to regulate the hotel, motel, inn to the same standard that we would regulate a rooming house? Do we want to continue to regulate rooming houses? If we do we want to have a local license for those? That's going to get confusing because some establishments will have multiple licenses then. So some of the bigger hotels in town have rooms that are rented less than 183 days, and then they have other rooms that are rented for more than 183 days.
Yeah, it's very possible that we have establishments that have 3 licenses.
Do you mind moving the mic closer to you?
Of course. So it might happen that we have establishments, if we went down the local licensing route, that we would need 3 licenses there. We would have the state lodging establishment license, followed by the city lodging establishment, and then possibly because the state is allowing you to license 4 or more rooms, it might call a need for maybe another 20% of the rooms that are more of the long-term stays. So that's where if we were to do a local rooming house license, it's possible we could have 3 licenses in one establishment with 2 different sets of rules. We see a little difficulty in that. It's not impossible, but it's something we're not ready to do.
And we're not sure that even establishments are gonna really wanna embrace that. Because when we do an inspection of those types of establishments, we're gonna need to know at that time, which rooms are you using for long stay, which ones are you using for short stay? And that could change at any time potentially, depending on the type of tenancy that's occurring in that establishment at that time. We've provided some suggestions here as to how this could work, kind of on the bottom half of page 2. The bulleted items there, possible considerations would be to continue to license at the local level, subject to PMC, which is Property Maintenance Code, and Life Safety Codes, resulting in annual inspections of common spaces and rooms not rented. So Property Maintenance Code, that's primarily what planning and code enforcement uses when they're inspecting any type of residence, whether it's single family, multifamily. We can apply that to lodging establishments now if we wanted to. But we typically limit that to common areas and rooms. We're not going into people's, in a hotel establishment, we're not going into occupied rooms per se. To Louis' point, this is probably gonna be burdensome because we're gonna have multiple licenses going to as an establishment depending on the type of occupancy that's occurring there. Second option could be to continue licensing, adopting specific operational requirements in addition to property maintenance and life safety codes for lodging rooming house establishments. So that's, we no longer use the state's rules for rooming houses, and we come up with another set of standards, something that the council feels important that we need to apply towards these types of establishments. That might be a reasonable idea, but again, there's gonna be another set of licenses there. We're still gonna have establishments that are potentially 2 to 3 different licenses, depending on how they choose to operate. The third bullet would be utilizing our rental registration ordinance. So currently structured inspections would not be annual, but may occur by Lewiston Fire proactively every 3 to 5 years as practiced with multifamily units, and then code enforcement would respond to complaints. This could be an option, so we would register all properties. So right now, rental registration is limited to multifamily dwellings. If you threw rooming houses or hotels, motel inns, any of those types of lodging establishments into rental registration, that would potentially give us the opportunity to have the appropriate contact information. And if we wanted to, as I go on to the next page, we could put language into the rental registration that says if you are a rooming house type of establishment, you will be subject to an annual inspection. So if there is a desire by the council to actually get eyes on these types of establishments on an annual basis versus a complaint-driven basis, that might be an opportunity. I think at this point, it just like Louis to kind of touch upon like some of the challenges or concerns he sees with the different types of establishments.
Well, sure. Well, besides for the possibility of having multiple licenses at establishments, what we're seeing is the tendency right now, especially with the pandemic, is the use of long-term rooming houses or lodging establishments. We're finding lots of, whether it be state or grant-funded vouchers for families to stay in a lot of these establishments that are meant for maybe 1 or 2 people, 1 bed. It's not uncommon that I do inspections where I'll run into a family of 4 and their pets in 1 lodging unit with 1 bed. These establishments are not set up for that style of long-term living. There's, rarely sinks to clean items in. The sanitation practices are not there because there's no staff really to do those services when someone's in there for a long stay. Unlike when you were to go on vacation or stay in a hotel, most people are leaving throughout the day. Services would come in, change bedding, clean, sanitize, which is in the code that it's done no less than every 3 days. we're not seeing this happen now with these long-term stays. I question how a lot of our rooming style lodging establishments were licensed in the first place according to these rules that we have. They're fairly strict, they're pretty purposeful to keep things clean, and they're set up for a hospitality style license and inspection platform, not for long-term stays. So it's just some of the problems that we're running into. So it's definitely, we have some work just before we decide if we're going to do any kind of licensing changes or use rental registration. We have a lot of cleanup to do in the ordinance already. It's mentioned in 4 and 5 different areas of the ordinance, zoning and land use. None of the definitions match the states. So we have some work to do, but figuring that we do it all at once, it'd be best to get your direction on that as well.
Anything else?
Not at this point. I think it would be good to hear some questions and see where the conversation goes.
Yeah, comments from the council? Councilor LaChapelle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I want to make it clear to everybody that's listening, I am one of those rooming house operators, owners. Myself and my company has more rooming houses than anybody else in the city. I have had extensive conversations with the other rooming house operators, and we're all in favor of having some kind of a licensing situation. What had happened, the state trying to deregulate, I don't want to say deregulate. They don't have the staff to do the work, to follow everything out. So rooming houses can still stay licensed from the state of Maine until somebody stays over 183 days. Once that happens, then it triggers that you're no longer a rooming house, and it turns into a long-term stay. That's no different than if the hotel, the Ramada Inn, has somebody that stays there for more than 183 days. It bumps them out of the hotel motel guidelines and moves them into another guideline. So what has happened locally is a lot of these establishments, because the state said about 2 years ago, this is ongoing for at least 2 years. About 2 years ago, we met with the state. I've spent a lot of money talking with the state through attorneys, and all the local operators stopped paying their licenses and their fees. So just about none of them are actually licensed in the city of Lewiston. And I think it's important for it to still be licensed and followed up for health safety, for checking hallways, making sure doors aren't blocked. So the rooming house and lodging houses fell under the hotel motel rules and guidelines, because when you went in, you still had to sign a guest book, you still had to sign stuff. And yes, the ones that I operate do have linen service available, do have house cleaning available. They have those things available, but it comes at an added cost. So no, it comes at the standard price. If you want the discounted rate, you don't get those services. So 99% of the people, pretty much 100% of the people just take the lower costs. And we're finding we're servicing a large amount of people in the community that frankly don't have any place else to go. It's either here, shelter, or the street. And we are full probably 98% of the time. We're 100% occupancy. In looking at the work that you did, and I thank you for it, utilizing the rental registration ordinance was a brilliant idea. So kudos to that. I guess the only thing that I saw that I think should be added is adding in, like on the second page, adding in shelters to some of the names, lodging houses, hotels, motels, bed and breakfast, hospitality, blah, blah, and just adding shelters to that word. That's going to be on page, it's the third page, that top paragraph where you're listing these units and adding shelters in. And then I might suggest that we add some terminology that the term of the stay is not a factor in determining the classification of a facility. And that's what the state tried to do. The term of the stay changed the classification of the facility. Would be just add that term of the stay is not a factor in determining the classification of the facility. And then these facilities, just like the shelter committee had, and it should be in protection of the Ramada Inn, the Days Inn, all the other hotels and motels that are in town, I suggest that we add the language, guests pursue, that these people that are staying there are guests pursuant, Article 30A, Section 3801, et sec, ETSEC, and not the tenants as defined by title, and not tenants defined by Title 14, Section 6000, et sec. I suggest adding that language, which still has the protection of the hotel motel rules that was intended at the onset of this. So that would be my suggestion on that. Besides that, I have no problem having a yearly inspection of the buildings. I have no issue at all. Now, what they're saying also is, if we're going by this ordinance, doesn't mean that we're not going to be in your building. They respond to complaints all the time. So if they get a complaint from somebody, they're going to be in that building within a day or so of the complaint. And they're there. We see them, we gladly welcome them in, because there are many issues, anywhere from blocked exits to bed bugs. There's just a whole host of issues when you're dealing with that. And the lodging and rooming houses are no different than the hotel motel that we're seeing. So that would just be my only suggestion. If they wanted to go yearly inspection, we're totally fine with that. 3 years, doesn't matter. They're still going to be in the buildings. And once they're in the building and they see something else, if they're there for a complaint for mold in the bathroom, somebody's complaining about that, and they see a blocked entrance, or a blocked exit, he's going to address the blocked exit at the same time. They're going to address that issue. So they will be in the buildings more than every 3 years. Or 3 to 5 years. I am open to any comments from the council. When it comes time to voting on anything, I'm being quite clear, I will step aside and I will not have any part in voting on any of the issues, but I have as much, if not more, knowledge on this subject than our presenters right now, and I'd be willing to answer any questions that the council might have. Thank you.
Director Hedeker, so are you, you understand from yourself and Mr. LaChance that several of the options here would be quite burdensome, not just for operators, but for staff as well. So I guess what exactly are you recommending
So,
in your expert opinion?
so at a minimum, as Louis mentioned, we got to clean up the ordinance with respect to definitions just to get consistency across ordinances with state statute. Then we need to make a decision as to whether or not we are going to hold rooming houses to the same standards as hotels, motels, inns. If that's going to be burdensome, because again, we're going to have establishments with multiple licenses. If the council wants us to do some type of regular inspection, and right now we wouldn't necessarily inspect yearly unless the ordinance was written to have yearly inspections done. We would under the state's inspection program. But anything other than that, we will have to put language in here that says, regular inspections will be required. If we tie that into something like rental registration and amend that language to say that, great, annual inspections are going to be required, and we limit it to property maintenance code and life safety requirements, which are already adopted ordinances that our department and the fire department uses, that's a good thing. It goes maybe to Councilor LaChapelle's point that we'll be going into common spaces, we'll be doing the exterior of the building. Common spaces in a rooming house would be if there's shared kitchen facilities, shared bathroom facilities, vacant rooms at the time. I don't think we're interested in necessarily going into occupied spaces.
Laundry facilities, You know, there could be another option here as well, thinking about it, and this actually would have to rely more on the city clerks and to see if we could have a license that would bring both a lodging establishment and rooming house into one. There's nothing that says that we can't do that. We would just have to redefine it, that it would be one license. It would be then subject to know that part of the hotel, motel, or inn could be inspected on the Department of Health and Human Services standards. And then we have a certain amount of rooms that it's just a common room, common area inspection. It is another possibility, but that would be if the clerks could put that together and incumbents that one license.
What we need to know regardless is there a desire to still inspect these types of facilities? Never mind hotels, motel, and inns. That's taken care of. That's going to still occur.
Not if they stay over 183 days. It changes that.
Agreed. So that's when, do we want to inspect those facilities that don't have, that where people are staying for a longer duration? And it could be our existing establishments, you know, the Ramada was referenced. They have whatever, 100 rooms there. At any time, those rooms could change from being lodging, hotel, motel rooms to something else. And that's the challenge that we're gonna have, or really the operator's gonna have. How many of those rooms in that establishment do you wanna have designated towards that one type of use? And I'm not sure that they're willing to dedicate space like that.
The state made this very difficult because they will now allow an establishment with 50 or 60 rentable rooms. If they have 4 rooms that they rent that are short-term and stay, they will license those 4 individual rooms. And that on that license will say, we room 1, 3, 5, and 6, and the rest of them are all long-term. That's the difficulty. That's what we're gonna be looking at. So that's the hard part on this end, on how from a city we're gonna accomplish, or if we need to accomplish, inspections at them.
And it's a challenge. A number of these establishments, like some of the older strip motels, people aren't necessarily living there just over 180 days. I mean, they're living there for months, for years.
6, 7 years, I found.
It's a form of housing for them. You know, it's a residence. It becomes a dwelling unit, even though it doesn't fit any definition of a dwelling unit. But that's, to Louis' point, that's why the rooms are, you know, they're not designed to be lived in for that duration. They end up putting, you know, hot plates and microwaves, and we're lucky nothing has actually happened in a lot of these establishments, given the age of them, the wiring, and the amount of activity that's actually occurring in them.
Councilor Scott?
Thank you. So I guess I have a couple of questions. Do we know how many rooming houses or lodging houses we have in the city?
Well, we have 22 licensed establishments. So the good thing is all the hotels, motels, inns, rooming houses are licensed in the city, but not maybe the state. So we do have a good track of that. So we have 22. Of the 22, I could see 19 of them having to change some type of licensing with the state, and then only classify a certain amount of rooms as licensable, as being able to be licensed. So up to 19 with long-term stays.
All right. So I definitely want to ensure that there's some sort of look at these establishments to ensure that they're up to code. I mean, we've had issues in the past with buildings that are not up to code. It's a fire hazard. I don't want to see a situation like that happen where it's not inspected at all. I think that's important that it is. My question on the rental registration ordinance, so don't the landlords have to, for that, put in who's in the built different apartments? So like if it's a landlord that has 5 apartments, isn't part of that registration naming who is in those units?
No.
They don't have to name that at all, so this wouldn't affect. I'm thinking a lodging house with a lot more tenants or somebody in it, that would be a lot of work. So I just want to make sure that that's not going to make it more work.
No,
on that part.
we're
Okay.
just, rental registration is limited to the owner, the business operator, the property manager, emergency contact numbers,
Okay.
number of dwelling units at any one
Just
time in
that.
that building.
Okay. And I guess I would question, if I might, Mr. Mayor, why Councilor LaChapelle wants to add homeless shelter in that one particular paragraph.
Councilor LaChapelle?
Thank you. Because in the ad hoc committee, they mentioned that they're guests at that facility. Hotels and motels are guests at the facility, so it's all encompassing. You're paying, but you're still a guest at the facility. That's not your primary stay. And it's just a level of protection for the facility, using the state's verbiage, per se, which gives us just that protection using those verbiage. And when I said the term of stay is not a factor in determining the classification of a facility, which now we're just wiping that out. So if they stayed 183 days, now the Ramada Inn is still called a hotel. It's no longer an apartment. It's not called an apartment, which the state's trying to change that classification to say if you're there plus 183 days, that spot, that room is no longer a hotel, it's an apartment. And so we're trying to change that. I think that changing that definition has the layer of protection that the operators can move under.
If I might, Mr. Mayor.
Please continue, Councilor Scott.
I would just want to ensure, and I would want you to look at this closer to ensure that the ordinance we just put in place for homeless shelters, and if we add that there, I just don't want them to be have to do any kind of anything like that. I want to ensure that there's not going to be any more stipulations with this on a homeless shelter.
It's not going to be, it's just, there's no extra burden.
Okay.
It's just more of a layer of protection for the shelter also.
What I would need to check, I'm not readily familiar with the statutes that Councilor LaChapelle referenced, but that's something that we should look at, the Title 38 and the Chapter 14. It is a discussion that him and I have had prior to this when the state was changing and how those rules may impact lodging establishments. So it might be something that we want to have the city attorney just look at to make sure where's the appropriate place to put that language, if it is appropriate at all.
Further comments from the council? Councilor Clement?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think at a very minimum, we ought to be looking at some type of licensure. Perhaps the rental registration ordinance as enacted would act as a framework. My basic concern is that we do property maintenance code and particularly life safety code. I'm not sure, not being a lawyer, whether we incur liability if we don't inspect some of these places where we may have licensed them in the past. If we let them go and something nefarious happens, there are plenty of people out there looking to win the bag of bucks without buying a ticket. So I think we need at a very minimum to be inspecting for life safety and property maintenance code. How we do that, I'm not sure. I heard the idea of rental registration ordinance. I like the idea of the combo license, if that's something we can kind of blend all together under the rental registration. That seems to me like something that would work. And then we get in there, I'm not opposed to an annual inspection. I mean, all it takes is boarding up an exit and, you know, the proverbial hot plate, that sort of thing, and instant tragedy. That's my thoughts, and that's what I'd be looking for to come out of this. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor McCarthy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When it comes to rooming houses, I think that they should be licensed and they should be inspected yearly, only because they're a unique thing where there's so much shared area. They share kitchen area, they share bathrooms, they share so much common area that I think that it would behoove the city to stay up on that and make sure that the owners are, the upkeep of those common areas are up to standard. But that's, you know, that in itself, you know, when you deal with, you know, motels and hotels that are converted to long-term stay like that, they usually have their own bathroom, they don't share a kitchen, so there isn't that common area sharing. But when it comes to the rooming houses, I think that there's so much common area that's shared for common purposes that it should be licensed. Thank you.
Councilor Harriman?
Thank you. I just had a question regarding the difference between guests and tenants, and I feel like I should know this answer, but and I don't know if you might. Is there a point where someone stays in an establishment that's not necessarily under the terms of a lease, where they become a tenant and gain the protections that a tenant has, as far as, the eviction process and all those things?
There is. I'm not sure that I'm fully prepared to speak to that, but that goes in part to the statutes that Councilor LaChapelle was referencing, where if you are a guest versus a tenant is subject to the protections of eviction law, which, depending on where you sit, is a good thing or a bad thing as far as the process and the time that goes into that. Versus if you were a guest, that's something that an operator can, engage the services of law enforcement and have that person removed in short order if they're, a problem character for some reason. So that is a desirable aspect, I believe, of rooming houses, of hotels, motels, inns, to be able to address those types of tenants in short order versus continuing to have that person there for weeks or months at a time while they may be, behaving poorly.
Yeah, I would just be concerned that whatever changes we make, that they don't reduce those protections that people have, once they stay somewhere for a certain length of time and become termed as a tenant. I just wouldn't want to take those protections away and call them guests. So, thank you.
Director Heidegger, we are running short on time here. I guess, do you have enough direction at this point?
Whether we talk about tonight or not, the second, to answer your question, I think so. The second part of this discussion, whether it's tonight or another time, is recovery residences. That did come to our attention through a couple of properties in administration, that there appears to be a growing need and the desire to operate recovery residences in the municipality. They are not licensed by the state. They are not regulated by us either at this point. And the question is there a reason or a concern that we should be licensing these types of establishments? There is a lot of overlap potentially between almost what you folks have worked on as a shelter establishment and a rooming house or lodging house. There's a lot of similarity between these types of establishments in the sense that they're providing, temporary housing or a stop on the way to some better choices. How should we regulate those? That's a question. How do we, and what should we be doing with them? We have a handful of them now in the community that we are aware of. There could be others that we're not sure of. What do we want to do with that?
Administrator Hunter, at this point, it is 6:33, and I would like to continue that discussion at another council workshop.
Okay.
So we will come back to that.
Sure. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
And do we have Director Hugh here?
Yeah.
We are ready for our next workshop.
So, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to start this process out, if you will. There was an initial policy that was presented to council a few months ago. We have revamped the policy. The policy that was presented was tabled indefinitely by you. I am making the decision to bring this condensed policy toward you for consideration. in order to align some policy or put some policy in place for your consideration on the books, or you can continue to table it indefinitely, as was the initial direction. But this goes hand in hand with our equity statement, and it allows, typically, if we need to address things from a training standpoint in the workforce for our employees, they tend to refer to a policy versus a statement that's accepted by the city. So it just allows us to have something to refer to. But again, you know, your direction was to table it indefinitely. So I want to afford you that same opportunity, recognizing, you know, this is a balancing act between putting something on the books and following that instruction.
Thank you, Administrator Hunter. Director Hugh?
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Point of order, yes. Councilor LaChapelle?
If it was tabled indefinitely, why are we even reviewing it right now? It was tabled indefinitely. Why is this brought back up? And does a table indefinitely means it's a table indefinitely?
That is up to the council to reaffirm that at this point, because the policy has been changed radically from what was presented to you. And it's just, I'm asking for reconsideration. If the direction is to continue to table it, I will take that instruction now.
I would love our city clerk, but it's my understanding that I understand your point, Councilor LaChapelle, but we are not in a council meeting at this point, and the administrator has wanted to bring it back up for a workshop, and I don't see an issue with that at this time. Councilor LaChapelle, would you like to, or I'm sorry, Councilor Clement, would you like to add something?
Just that the administrator has put this in front of us as asking whether or not we want to continue to table this indefinitely. She's opened the door on that. And this highly irregular, I think, that we go ahead on something like this. I see some changes in the policy. I see some things that are good in the policy. There are still a lot of questions. There are questions from the last workshop that have not been answered. So I for one, am not ready to move forward with this.
Councilor Jalanis?
Thank you. I am interested in reconsideration at this point. I'd love to hear from Director Hugh. I had an opportunity to read the revised policy, and my vote would be that we reconsider this. Thank you.
At this point, councilors, I feel that since we are in a workshop, it is the discretion of the presiding officer to decide whether we continue or not. And at this point, I would ask the council to at least let Director Hugh go over the policy that was included in the packet, and then take comments and go from there.
Mayor?
Councilor Clement, yes?
I appeal the ruling of the chair.
We are not currently in a meeting right now. We are in a workshop.
You indicated that you were ruling something. As chair, we have the right to appeal that ruling.
Thank you, Councilor Clement. Councilor Herman, would you like to say something at this point?
Thank you. I would also like to hear about the new policy. I thought that the direction that was given at the last meeting when we discussed the policy was that there was a desire for a workshop to go over it because there were questions by some councilors and concerns by some councilors. So now we are in a workshop about this policy. I'd like to discuss it. Thanks.
Point of, it's not an order, it's the procedure, Mr. Mayor.
Right. Yes. No. Do we have our Madam Clerk available
I can make sure she is.
Mr. Mayor?
while we wait for Madam Clerk?
It's
Councilor
just a
Clement.
question.
Or sorry.
I have appealed the ruling of the chair. You must take action on that, sir.
Yeah. It's my understanding that we are not in a meeting. This is a
Well,
council
you made
workshop.
a ruling, you called it a ruling.
So it's procedurally.
It's a
so I just
procedural.
follow-
Order's the day, sir.
Do we, what if any procedures do we follow in a workshop?
No, yes, no, I understand.
Don't know.
I've got her.
Counselor Scott, would you like to weigh in at this point?
Yes, I would, thank you. So I just asked, this is a workshop, we're not voting on anything tonight. We have now 20 minutes before our regular meeting starts. Let's hear it. And then we can find out what's going on and the indefinite thing. I think that we just, right now, just so that we're not having any waste of time, our director is here. I personally had some questions about this and was wondering if our ethics policy some of that was already covered and if we needed a policy on this specific, but I don't know.
I mean, we can't, I understand you have, thank you, Counselor Scott. Counselor Clement, I understand you have appealed the ruling, but I guess I'm kind of unsure how to proceed since we are in a workshop.
You
and
appeal
per-
the ruling, sir, the body decides whether or not your ruling stands.
Right, but it's my understanding that we can't vote at this time, but perhaps in the interest of moving things forward, we can kind of decide by consensus whether we are moving forward or not. I guess, Counselor Pease, do you have, I'm sorry, Counselor
No,
LaChapelle, did
that's
you have?
exactly what he's saying. He's appealing your ruling, so he's just asking the body, do we proceed or do we stop it right here?
I
So that's-
would be, yes, I would be willing to proceed or not proceed based on consensus at this point. Counselor Pease, would you like to weigh in?
Mr. Mayor?
1 second, Counselor Scott. Counselor McCarthy, did you want to weigh in?
I have a question for the administrator. If we go forward with listening to all of this, do we have to take a vote to retable it? Or how will that, if we open up discussion on it, does that put it back on the table?
It, after you, Administrator Hunter.
Okay. You can provide the direction at the end of the workshop on whether you would like to see it appear on the agenda or continue.
Yes, I was going to agree with Administrator Hunter. This is simply informational in nature, and the council would have the opportunity to either bring it back onto the agenda or not bring it up.
Okay, I just wanted to
on the
make
agenda.
sure that it wasn't gonna throw a monkey wrench into the works then. Okay, thank you. But I'm not opposed to hearing the director at this time.
Madam Clerk, have you been caught up to speed?
Not entirely, I apologize.
Not a problem. So here's my understanding. So we are in a workshop, and there's some confusion as to whether we can proceed or not, and Councillor Clement wishes to not continue with the workshop. What is the process here? I guess I'm a little unclear since we are not in a meeting.
Right, and that's correct. I mean, workshops are by nature informational sessions for the council to receive information and to dialogue about it, to ask for clarification by the presenter, and basically to receive information about whatever the topic is on the workshop. But you're absolutely right, Mr. Mayor, that workshops are more informal in nature. Typically, no decisions, no formal binding decisions are made, but certainly direction could be provided to staff, such as, we would like to proceed with this item, please place it on the next agenda, or that sort of action regarding direction to staff. But no binding decisions. They can't adopt a particular policy or an ordinance that's discussed in workshop, because again, it's just really an information receiving session and also an opportunity to clarify and ask any follow-up questions.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Sure.
Councillor Clement.
I would ask permission to ask the clerk a question as to whether or not the mayor making a ruling in a workshop, can the body appeal his ruling?
Madam
Yes.
Clerk, if,
As presiding chair, we operate under Robert's rules.
Correct.
He makes a ruling under Robert's rules. we as a body have a right to appeal that ruling.
That is correct,
And
because
that takes precedence and must be done immediately, does it not?
this is still a forum, as you noted, of the body, whether it's a workshop session or a meeting session. So I would concur with you, Counselor, that yes, the body still holds ultimate authority over the actions of the body, and should they choose to appeal the decision of the presiding officer, in this case the mayor, the body as a full body acting together is welcome to do that.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, at this point, I
Madam Clerk.
withdraw my request for an appeal of your ruling. Move on with the workshop, and we'll make direction at the end of the workshop.
Thank you, Councilor Clement. Director Hugh, please continue. I guess if you can start us off with an overview of what's in the packet and what's changed, I would appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you all for having me tonight. So just to go through this, I will note that the formatting has changed to fit in the personnel and ethics policy. The purpose has been extended to be more intentional. The definitions have been changed. Some are relatively similar to align with the federal executive order on DEI. Religious disability, compliance monitoring, reporting, and ERG groups have been removed, and redundancy in the policy in itself has been changed to be clear and concise. So I will leave it up to all of you for questions that you may have.
Councilor Harriman?
Thank you. Thank you for being here tonight. So I just wanted to clarify, this applies to all, it applies to employees, I assume. Does it also apply to elected officials and to appointed members of boards and commissions?
Appointed members of boards and commission has not been added to this. It can be, but so far we have employees and elected officials.
Thank you.
Further comments from the council? And forgive me if you just mentioned this, but so one glaring change from the last draft was, so are affinity groups now missing, or am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, so affinity groups, taking into consideration what was said at the last meeting, right now we've removed it. That is because if we do this work correctly and we do this right, affinity groups are support groups for people who feel ostracized in the system. If we're moving in the right direction, there would be no need for this to happen anyway. Everybody would feel included despite. So taking that into consideration.
Thank you, Director Hugh. Further comments from the council? Councilor Jelinas.
Thank you, and thank you, Director Hugh, for coming here tonight. I appreciate the changes that you put forth, and you clearly were listening during that last conversation that we had, and I can see those changes. I think a policy like this is really important for the city of Lewiston, because a statement is one thing, but a policy is another. And I just want to, applaud your efforts in putting this together. Thank you.
Councilor Pease.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a question, Director Yu. I read here, it says, staff who have the responsibility for evaluating the performance of others will fulfill such responsibility on the basis of clarity and state the criteria. I guess what I'm trying to understand it is, how can I do this? If an employee is an African American, one evaluating them, do they have to be African American according to this?
Melissa, do you see where he's at?
Yeah, I see
Okay.
where he's at. Responsibility on the basis of clearly stated criteria. So we have performance evaluations, and there's a criteria set. So we're saying that you have to judge the performance based off of the performance evaluation, nothing else.
So there's no way that an employee that's being evaluated can come back at the city or the one doing the evaluation and saying discrimination or whatever. It's not possible.
So if they find that they're not being judged based off of the criteria that's already set, they are inclined to write a comment and dispute and then consider the procedures after. But we're just saying that they must stick to the job description set for that employee.
Okay, I think I'll ask you some more questions later, but thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Scott?
Thank you. I'm just going to state that I'm a little bit embarrassed right now about how that was all handled. And I think we could do this a lot better. And I apologize. That's all I got to say right now.
Further comments from the council? Councilor Hartman?
Thank you. So this policy would be, if this were adopted as an agenda item later, this would just be alongside all the other employee policies that we have. And what would be the process if somebody felt that they weren't, that this policy was not being followed by their superior or by any other coworker?
Yep. So to answer your first question, yes, in the purpose, it says that it complements the ethics and personnel policy, and the procedure is listed in the personnel policy as the Whistleblowers Act or speaking to your supervisor or any other procedures and guidelines that we already have set in place.
Thank you, and thank you again for putting this together and for being here tonight.
Anything else that you'd like to add, Director Hugh?
I just want to say I want to thank you all and appreciate you taking a look at this policy. It was done with the purest of intention and to be as neutral as possible. It's cemented in the Civil Rights Act of 1964 as well as in the Equal Employment Opportunity Commissions. So that is the baseline for the Code of Conduct and for fostering a sustained diversity program.
From my perspective, I appreciate your work on this, and I understand what you're trying to do and support you in your office completely. I think it's important for recruitment, and it kind of shows who we are as a city. I do wish that affinity groups had stayed in. I think it's important to create safe spaces for people to come together and support one another, but I understand where we're at. At this point, Administrator Hunter, should we find out the direction of the council moving forward?
That would be appreciated, thank you.
Councilors, how do you feel about moving forward at this point? Councilor Harriman?
I would like to see this put on a future agenda so we can discuss it and potentially vote on it.
Councilor Jelinek?
I concur.
Councilor Scott?
Nothing wrong with the discussion. I agree.
Councilor Pease?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to see it as another workshop for us to get the information totally. Then we can decide where we go from there. Whether we can go review it at a regular council meeting on an agenda item, or we just leave it the way it is. Thank you.
Councilor Pease, am I to understand that you, I guess, would like it to be, to schedule another workshop slot for this to ask more questions and have more time? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Councilor LaChapelle?
Mr. Mayor, I suggest, there's nothing wrong with listening. I suggest that we put this after the first of the year, move it back, and we schedule a time come January or February that we look at this topic and have a more in-depth and schedule far more than a half hour for this conversation, because there are a lot of interesting material that I'd like to review also. So if we're going to do it, I believe to untable it, it has to be from the motion from the people that tabled it to untable it. Is that correct?
I don't remember how this was resolved before. I believe it was voted to postpone indefinitely. Is that correct? Yes. So to postpone indefinitely basically is to kill the matter. It is coming before you, though, again, under the process called renewal of motions, because it's coming to you again in a different format. It's a different policy. There's different language. So it is allowed to come back before you again. I would have to double check the language. I believe if it's postponed indefinitely, that criteria is definitely different than to postpone temporarily. So we'll take a look at that and get some information to you on that regarding who can bring it back again. And that would really be pertaining to the action on the council agenda during the regular business meeting.
Okay. So I would suggest moving this to the first of the year at some point, that we can have just allow a lot more time to discuss this. Please, that would be my suggestion.
Administrator Hunter, what are your thoughts on pushing it back so far?
I would have to look at the schedule. I know with we have limited opportunities in November. And then next week, the rest of them, I think most of the workshops are already spoken for that during this time of the year, leading up to the budget season, and then you have the LCIP and some of those precursors to the LCIP that are already slotted in December, particularly with Public Works and some of the projects they want to outline before they have to approve or include them in the capital improvement plan.
Understood, thank you. At this point, Councilor Clement, would you like to say something?
Yeah, I listened to what Councilor LaChapelle had to say, and I think we move this to a meeting, either the first or second meeting in January, or a January workshop before we get heavily involved in the budget season, where we can discuss this once and for all and come up with a finite, absolute decision.
And Councilor Harriman, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I just don't see why we would just keep pushing it, kicking the can down the road. This process started in June. Started before June, and we took it up in a June meeting. We had a workshop tonight where people could have asked questions, and not that many questions were asked. So I just don't, it just seems like a delay tactic to me to just keep pushing it out months and more months and more months.
Madam Clerk, at this point, I guess if you can determine how, when, and if it could be brought back, and then Administrator Hunter, if you could look at the workshop schedule, and then we can go from there. Thank you, Director Hugh. We will start the meeting in a few minutes. Hello, I invite you to take your seat. Our meeting is beginning, and I'd like to invite Zam Zam to start us off with a Pledge of Allegiance. And if you've been following along to our meetings here, we now have Lewiston Leads, where we, counselors and myself, recognize a deserving Lewistonian. And we have, first up is Counselor Scott.
Thank you. We all set? Okay. Zam Zam, would you come join me, please? I will tell you, when I wrote this, I think I could have written a book on the accomplishments, the achievements, and everything that Zam Zam has done for our community. When I heard that Zam Zam had recently moved to my ward, I immediately knew that I wanted her to receive my next Lewiston Leads coin. Zam Zam, to me, is the epitome of what this coin means. Go anywhere in this community, from the halls of our schools, our police department, fire department, public works, hospitals, and just about any street, and mention her name, and you will hear nothing but accolades for Zam Zam. And all the great things she does for our community and for everybody here. She is the bridge that connects all in our city, whether a lifetime resident or someone that moved here last week, from attending countless sporting events to support our youth and wearing my blue wig at those events. She's also always there helping out anybody that reaches out to her. In my opinion, Zam Zam is the true ambassador of Lewiston. As her city councilor, as her neighbor, and as her blessed friend, and I am blessed, I am beyond honored to give her this recognition tonight.
Counselor Jelinek.
As part of the Lewiston Leads program, it's my pleasure and my honor this evening to recognize Megan Parks. Come on up, Megan. A resident of Ward 7, Megan has served as the director of the temporary FEMA-funded homeless shelter and COVID quarantine programs from April 2020 until May 2022. She has worked alongside others as part of the Citizen Committee to develop a 24-hour low-barrier resource center to address homelessness in Lewiston, Auburn. Megan is not only a licensed DHHS foster parent, but she's also a state-licensed social worker, substance use counselor, and clinical supervisor, currently working as an inpatient psych and chemical dependency clinician. Additionally, Megan has a small private practice here in town. She's the vice chair and the at-large citywide rep on the Lewiston School Committee, serving in her 4th term. Megan serves on the board of directors at Trinity Jubilee Center, Androscoggin County Jail, the Lewiston Area Public Health Committee, the City Spirit Committee, the LPS Policy Subcommittee. She's the chair of the LPS Dropout Prevention Committee and on the LPS 6 through 8 Concept Committee. Megan is a certified Red Cross disaster response provider, and I could go on. But the idea behind Lewiston Leads, the Lewiston Leads program that is to identify quiet heroes and those that may go above and beyond as Lewiston citizens. And while Megan's credentials are certainly impressive and her engagement in city affairs is exemplary, I'm acknowledging Megan tonight with a challenge coin because of how she goes above and beyond. My reasoning for acknowledging you tonight, Megan, is this. Thank you for spending your free time volunteering in the community, providing food, blankets, companionship, and other needed supports to Lewiston's underserved who often just want to be seen, heard, and acknowledged. We appreciate your servant heart. making the city of Lewiston and our community is a better place because of you. Thank you.
Another round of applause for our Lewiston Leads recipients. Congratulations, Megan and Sam Zam. Lynn? Oh. Please join me at the front here. And remind me how to pronounce your last name.
Leaker.
Lynn Albert Leager, Lewiston artist. So a few words here, and then we have a quick presentation. So you stop me if I get anything wrong. In the mid-1970s, Lynn was commissioned to carve the Lewiston seal of a 3x3 piece, 3 foot by 3 foot, piece of Monson, Maine black slate. His skills were self-taught with the book Sculpture Techniques in Clay, Wax, and Slate as his guide. He checked it out of the local library. Upon completion, the carved seal was presented to then Lewiston Mayor Lillian Caron, who, if I'm not mistaken, is the first female mayor in Lewiston. A few years ago, the Sun-Journal wanted to do a story about Mr. Leager and the seal. However, at the time, that was not possible. But recently, you have done a story with the Sun-Journal, and you stopped by City Hall yes, you stopped by City Hall to observe the seal, which hangs in the city administration office. Mr. Leager has continued to sculpt and carve and is determined to share his abilities with others in the community so that this type of craftsmanship will continue for years to come. And so tonight, when I found out that he checked, so it's this book. It's not, so the book is still at the library. This is another copy. So when I found out that he recently checked out the book to read it again, I found a copy and purchased it, and I would like to present you with your very own copy. And then we have a certificate of recognition in appreciation for the 122 hours he undertook to carve a Monson, Maine 3x3 black slate Lewiston seal that is proudly displayed at Lewiston City Hall. Mr. Leager is also commended for his commitment to share his self-taught skills with others to actively sustain his craftsmanship legacy. A round of applause for Mr. Leager. If I may, I left a note in here. Dear Lynn, if I'm allowed to call you that, thank you for creating art for our city. Signed by me. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And now, if I can have Green Little Chef Dan Caron come up front here. So I have a second presentation here in recognition of Chef Dan Caron's 25 years of service with the Green Ladle. Whereas Chef Danny Caron is a culinary icon, not only for his cooking expertise, but his keen ability to effectively instruct and connect with students at the Green Ladle. And whereas his 25-year professional rapport with students has been nothing short of phenomenal, providing them with a strong foundation to work at diverse restaurants and open their own establishments. And whereas Chef Caron's instruction was not just about cooking, but bestowing pride in the profession, encouraging student aspirations, providing customer service excellence, and enhancing local hospitality through green ladle events, lunch service, and catering. A great open house this weekend, by the way. The macaroons were delicious. Whereas Chef Caron also modeled civility and mutual respect, interacting with students, staff, vendors, and community members in an exemplary manner. And whereas countless alumni are still in touch with Chef Caron, as he was not just an instructor, but an individual who played an integral role in the personal growth and development of his students. And whereas Chef Caron is proud of all of his students, whom he describes as amazing, and also exudes pride in their selfless community contributions to include feeding the homeless at the Ramada Inn every Saturday and Sunday for 5 months during the pandemic, providing daily meals for 500 shut-ins for 3 months with Lewiston Regional Technical Center Director Rob Callahan and staff delivering meals during the pandemic, raising over $80,000 from local businesses to purchase a food truck named Community Serving Community that operates to raise money for LA food insecurities, providing 400 meals every Wednesday and Friday for take-home evening meals for students, and developing a food co-op to save staff and money on evening groceries. Now, therefore, I, Carl L. Shaleen, Mayor of the City of Lewiston, do hereby officially recognize Chef Danny Caron for his stellar 25 years of service with the Green Ladle and his heartfelt investment in Lewiston youth. Thank you both so much. Madam Clerk.
All roll call votes for this meeting will begin with the Councilor of Ward 4.
And I, to understand that we will not be doing the minutes this,
Right, I apologize. We'll bump those for the next meeting.
not a problem. Thank you, Madam
Thank
Clerk.
you.
We are now up to public comment. Any member of the public may make comments regarding issues pertaining to Lewiston City Government. This period is reserved for non-agenda items. Public comment is also allowed during individual agenda items. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person. Please state your name for the record and please indicate if you are a Lewiston resident. Because this is the business meeting of the City Council, all questions should be directed to the mayor, who will ask staff to follow up at a future time. It is illegal for the City Council to allow comments related to personnel matters. All personnel complaints should be made directly to the City Administration Office.
Hello, Mr. Mayor and City Council. My name is Caleb Roebuck, and I live here in Lewiston. Some of you witnessed this event I'm about to speak about. Some of you know why I'm here to speak about it. But on Sunday, October 2nd, a large group of neo-Nazis gathered at Kennedy Park. This is not me saying everyone I disagree with is a Nazi, because I know that's going to be the first line of attack when I say this. But these are loud, proud, and open Nazis. The group they belong to is called NSC 131, and NSC stands for the National Socialist Club. The National Socialist was the official name of the Nazi Party in Germany. They view themselves as at war with a hostile Jewish-controlled system who is trying to, and I quote, exterminate the white race. They are objectively Nazis, and they were here on Sunday. I didn't hear about this until a friend of mine from California posted a video where there was one brave soul there who confronted them and got them to leave. One person. These Nazis, for some reason, they felt emboldened enough to come here unchallenged, and that is absolutely not okay. I asked the City Council and the Mayor to at least put out a proclamation condemning this and standing with our immigrant and minority people of Lewiston, because these people are a threat to their existence. I also want the city to look into why they felt like they could come here and work to make sure that they never step foot in Lewiston again. We are better than this, and we don't want them here. Thank you.
Audit, please, thank you. Further public comment?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dr. Ron Springle. I'm a retired medical doctor serving as the executive director of the Maine Association of Recovery Residences. I'm a resident of Scarborough, Maine, so I'm infiltrating your meeting. But I came today because I heard that your work session would include discussion of recovery residences, and I wanted to hear what David and Lewis had to say, and also had the opportunity to speak with them for about 25 minutes after the work session. It was very enlightening, I think, for both. I wanted to let you know that MAR is a nonprofit corporation in the state, that we serve as the local state affiliate of the National Alliance of Recovery Residences. So we inspect and certify the 67 Maine residences, recovery residences, that are part of our organization. 4, or soon to be 5 of those, are in Lewiston. I wanted to inform the City Council that I would be happy to come and speak about recovery residences at a future time. And I won't take up any more of your precious time. Thank you very much.
Hi, Luke Jensen, Ward 5, Sylvan Avenue. Just watching at home, just I guess some constructive feedback, because I was on the council last term and we had the same problem that I'm kind of noticing with you guys. There's no process or procedure for creating the agenda. I get that someone makes the agenda, they put items on it, I get it, an agenda happens. But it's very confusing as to how an agenda, takes place. You guys were arguing about one of the workshop items. How was that not decided beforehand? Why did it take to this meeting, actually at the meeting, till you guys actually had the discussion of should we be talking about this? Who controls the agendas? I'm asking rhetorically because I know you guys are supposed to respond, but think about it. Do any of you know the answer? If you want to get something on an agenda, how do you do it? Because last term, we didn't have any procedure, and it was very confusing. It got to the point where at meetings, counselors would have to wait till the end and just kind of spew out what we wanted to talk about, because otherwise it wouldn't get on an agenda. And I noticed, is it the last meeting or the meeting before that too, you guys did that. There were like 4 or 5 of you that added something or asked for something to be added to a future agenda item. You can plan those things behind the scenes. It's not deciding how you're going to vote. That's totally allowed. So I guess, as more of an outsider now, I would suggest you guys, one, the charter should definitely be changed because it's wicked confusing. The fact that the mayor's in the city council section is not divided up is just, it's stupid. But you guys can make a policy that actually decides how you decide the agenda, so you're not waiting until meetings to actually decide what or should not be said. And maybe, I get that there are 4 of you that are pretty aligned, and then 3 of you are kind of a mix that aren't necessarily, so make sure you're getting everyone's take in this. When you guys vote, that's where you can decide, majority rules, I get it. Is the way it is, but to get things on the agenda, you shouldn't be trying to keep things off of it. So it was embarrassing watching, at home. I completely agree with Councilor Scott. It was embarrassing. It was embarrassing to see. It was embarrassing when I was on it and we were having to throw things in at the last, at the end of the meeting. So please, please, please have a workshop, create some kind of policy about creating agenda items. What's the process? What's the procedure? I would suggest maybe having the mayor, council president, maybe one other councilor, the clerk, and the administrator. Together, every single one of those maybe can add an agenda item if they want. That clears it up. Cool. Or at least make a schedule for it. So just criticism there. Also, something completely different. If a group of combat veterans who had experienced some tough combat, just traumatizing stuff that they didn't want to talk to people about unless they'd gone through the same kind of experience, and they wanted like a place to talk to each other, but not have other people that weren't like there, part of it there, would you guys say that they're excluding people? You say they're being anti anyone who's not a combat veteran? No, you'd probably say that they went through a tough experience, they want to feel comfortable talking about it, and they can only do so with each other. Makes sense, right? So why don't you see that for people of color? They don't go through the same experience that someone like me does. If my grandmother had rocks thrown at her leaving church, that's not the same as my great-grandmother being enslaved. It's just not. So you guys need to do a better job with the diversity, equity, inclusion. Like, allow for affinity spaces. It's silly.
Thank you. Your time is up, sir.
I'm well aware. Thanks.
Thank you. Further public comment?
Hi, City Council. My name is Johnny Clark, and I'm co-owner, founder, and executive director of A Hand Up Sober Living in Lewiston. I was under the understanding that the workshop would be also about sober living. I just wanted to state that we are, like Ron spoke earlier, under the governance of the Maine Association for Recovery Residences. The conditions that they enforce are pretty strict as they are. And I think that they're there to help support the people that are in recovery, also keep the building safe, check smoke detectors, etc. And all these things are necessary for us to run a recovery residence. I don't see why there would be any added restrictions on something that's there to save lives in the first place. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Further public comment? Madam Clerk, agenda item number 1.
Item number 1, public hearing on a renewal application for a special amusement permit for live entertainment for the Carriage House Plus, 1119 Lisbon Street.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Councilor LaChapelle. Second by Councilor Clement. Discussion? Seconded by Councilor Pease. My apologies. Discussion? Public comment for this agenda item? Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7? Yes. Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Agenda item number 2.
Item number 2, public hearing for renewal of an outdoor entertainment permit for the Casting Nets Outreach. Requested action to conduct a public hearing on an application from the Casting Nets Outreach for outdoor musical concerts and performances to be held at Samard Payne Memorial Park on October 8th, and to authorize a permit for an outdoor entertainment event as required by the City Code of Ordinances, Chapter 10, Article 1, Section 10-3, to the Organizing Committee for the Outdoor Music Concerts, contingent upon positive recommendations from the Police Department, Fire Department, Code Land Use Officer, and Code Health Officer regarding compliance with all regulations and compliance with all city ordinances.
So
May I have a
moved.
motion, please?
So moved.
Councilor Jelinas.
Second.
Second by Councilor McCarthy. Discussion? Public comment for this agenda item? Back to the council. I just had a quick question. So what is a casting net, or the Casting Nets Outreach?
It is church services, live worship with keyboard, guitar, skits, testimonials, inspirational speaking. It's an organization from Sedgwick, Maine, that is coming to do outreach, a youth rally within our community.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Further comment from the council? Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Agenda item number 3.
Item number 3, public hearing on an application for a business license renewal for Merrimack River Medical Services Incorporated for an outpatient addiction treatment clinic at 18 Mollison Way. There are 2 items for requested action. The first item is to conduct a public hearing to receive citizen input and comment regarding the application submitted by Merrimack River Medical Services Incorporated for renewal of their business license to operate an outpatient addiction treatment clinic at 18 Mollison Way, Lewiston.
So moved.
Do you need a motion, or are we just proceeding right to the public hearing?
We don't need a motion or a vote. You can just go right to the public hearing. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're welcome. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Public hearing for this agenda item. And back to the council, or Madam Clerk, what is the next step?
Sure, the next step would be, the motion before you would be to approve the license for an outpatient addiction treatment clinic for Merrimack River Medical Services Incorporated to operate a clinic at 18 Mollison Way, Lewiston, subject to the attached conditions.
May I have a motion?
For passage?
Second.
Councilor Clement, seconded by Councilor Jelinas. Discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Agenda item number 4.
Item number 4, public hearing and adoption of resolve to approve the Auburn Lewiston Home Consortium Home ARP PY21 allocation plan. There are 2 items for requested action. The first item is to conduct a public hearing regarding the proposed Auburn Lewiston Home Consortium Home ARP PY21 allocation plan.
May I have a motion? Or, public hearing on this. Public hearing is now closed. Madam Clerk?
Sure. The next one is to adopt the resolve to approve the Auburn Lewiston Home Consortium Home ARP PY21 allocation plan.
So moved.
Councilor Jelinas,
Second.
seconded by Councilor Clement. Anything you'd like to say, Director Jeffers?
This has been in process for a while. This is the second public hearing. We did 2 meetings back in August, and really this is reflection of what the council's wishes were at the time. Jessica's been working hard. We're getting ready to put a request for proposals on the street towards the end of this month, making agencies aware that this funding is available for those who want to take advantage of the supportive services. But at this point, it's really up to the council to make it official, and then we'll move forward with implementation.
Thank you, Director Jeffers. Further comment from the council? Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counsel from Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes?
Ward 7?
Yes?
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Jeffers. Madam Clerk, agenda item number 5.
Item number 5, amendments to the city business license fee schedule policy regarding the fees for shelters. Requested action to approve the proposed amendments to the city business licensing fee schedule policy, policy manual number 7, as recommended by the city clerk.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
Councilor LaChapelle?
Second.
Second by Councilor McCarthy. Comment from the council? Public comment? Back to the council. How did this come about, Madam Clerk?
This is just a follow-up, basically the completion of the shelter ordinance process. Now that the shelter ordinance has been adopted, we need to amend the business licensing policy, which sets the fee, the licensing fee, and then also lists out which departments need to sign off on the license before we can issue it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Madam Clerk, please. Councilor Scott, would you like to add something?
Yes, I just had one thing. When we're looking at the back of the fees, and it says fees, penalties, and inspection and approval schedule under shelters, isn't that city council approval as well with the new ordinance? It just says approval by the police, fire, and code enforcement. What was I misunderstanding?
It's just the fee.
Huh? It's just for the fee, so that we don't, that's not for the license approval,
No, no,
correct? Just the fee.
Right, so if I may, Mr. Mayor, on the front page of the handout is the fee schedule, so Councilor Scott is correct. And then on the back side is the approval schedule. We know that the ordinance states the first time through.
Okay.
We really view this as renewals are ongoing. And certainly every department that is listed here, police, fire, code enforcement, needs to sign off every time. But we do realize the initial one needs to go to city council, and that's codified in the ordinance.
Thank you for the clarity.
Thank you.
Further comment? Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes?
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Agenda item number 6.
Item number 6, public hearing and approval for amendments to the general assistance policy for annual authorization of eligibility amounts. Requested action that the maximum amounts allowed for general assistance and the maximum amounts allowed for food, housing, personal care, utilities, heating, fuel, transportation, and recovery residence expenses in the general assistance policy for persons eligible to receive assistance in accordance with the standards of eligibility be adopted as presented in accordance with HUD guidelines and the current Thrifty Food Plan.
May I have a motion, please? Councilor Harriman,
Second.
second by Councilor Scott. Director Brackett, thank you.
Yes.
Director Brackett, would you like to start us off?
Sure. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and the council. My name is Elaine Brackett, and I'm the Director of Social Services. I'm here to present the new general assistance maximums. It would cover from October 1st, 2022 to September 30th, 2023. The overall maximums have increased by 5.5%. The food maximum have increased by 12.3% to align with the Thrifty Food Plan. Housing maximums have increased by 11.3%. The utility maximums have increased by 42.5% due to inflation. And the mileage rate has increased from 2.2%. The two appendices that did not change are the heating, fuel, and the personal care and the hygiene. in regards to the recovery residents, to align with LD 964, which is an act to expand access to certified substance use disorder recovery resident services. Department of Human Services has established housing rates based at 75% of a one-bedroom unit. The established rate is $561.75 a month, which we would round off to $562. Now, prior recovery residence amounts were calculated at a prorated share. What that means is that if there was a unit that had 3 bedrooms, our overall cap might have been $800. We would only issue a third of the $800. So that would amount to about $277 a month, which really is not enough to provide services for these folks in recovery services or recovery houses. The recovery residents must provide certification of MAR, which is the main association of recovery residents, to the municipality. This certification will ensure that the recovery residence is meeting ethical and safety standards. And these maximums are set by the Department of Housing and Urban Development in the Thrifty Food Plan. Do you have any questions?
Comments from the council? Public comment? Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes?
Ward 7?
Yes?
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Director Brackett, we appreciate you. Thank you very much. Agenda item number 7.
Item number 7, condemnation hearing for the building located at 808 Webster Street. There are 2 items for requested action. The first item is to conduct a hearing to determine if the building located at 808 Webster Street has met the dangerous building statutes as defined in Title 17, Section 2851 et al. And I will just note, Mr. Mayor, that the city attorney will come up, will remove the chair, and kind of sit between you and Councilor Burnett. Thank you.
Come on over.
Director Hediger, if you both could introduce yourself, and then please proceed.
Sure. I'm David Hediger, Director of Planning and Code Enforcement.
Nicholas Richard, Code Enforcement Officer, Building Inspector for the city.
So we're here before you tonight regarding a dangerous building hearing for 808 Webster Street. The building at 808 Webster Street, which I will refer to as the structure, is a single-family dwelling owned by Joel Nason and Lois Alquist, also called Lois Nason, by virtue of a warranty deed dated June 30th, 2006. The warranty deed to Joel Nason and Lois Alquist is in your packets as Exhibit A. On September 22nd, 2022, the sheriff's deputy swore an affidavit that Joel Nason appears to be avoiding contact with law enforcement and that the deputy has no further leads to locate Mr. Nason. The sheriff's affidavit is in your packets as Exhibit D. Statute provides that when the address of an owner is unknown or is unascertainable with reasonable diligence, the notice must be published once a week for 3 successive weeks prior to the date of hearing in a newspaper. Notice for Joel Nason will be published in the newspaper, and we expect to continue this hearing as to Mr. Nason to November 1st, 2022. 808 Webster Street is identified.
Excuse me, Director Hediger, I've received some late-breaking news that I have something that I should read to kind of start us off.
Please do.
Thank you. So we are meeting this evening to conduct a hearing to determine whether the structure at 808 Webster Street is a nuisance or dangerous building within the meaning of the applicable Maine statute found in Section 2851 of Title 17 of the Maine Revised Statutes, and whether the structure poses a serious threat to public health and safety within the meaning of the Section 2856 of that title and must be secured. If the council makes either determination, it will then determine what actions the property owner must take. Under Section 2851, a structure or any part thereof is a nuisance or a dangerous building if it is structurally unsafe, unstable, unsanitary, constitutes a fire hazard, is unsuitable or improper for the use or occupancy to which it is put, constitutes a hazard to health or safety because of inadequate maintenance, dilapidation, obsolescence, or abandonment, or an otherwise dangerous to life and property. Under Section 2856, a municipality has the right to secure buildings that pose a serious threat to the public health and safety, and notice on the owner and parties in interest need not be given before securing the building if that threat to the public health and safety requires prompt action. These are standards that we will use to decide whether the structure is a nuisance or dangerous building and must be secured. Before we start, I first have a question for all city council members. The building at 808 Webster Street is owned by Joel Nason and Lois Alquist, who is or was formerly also known as Lois Nason. The following have recorded encumbrances on the real estate at 808 Webster Street. U.S. Bank National Association, not in its individual capacity, but solely as the trustee for the RMAC Trust Series 2016-CTT. Nation Star Mortgage, LLC. Homeowners Assistance Corporation, and Portfolio Recovery Associates, LLC. Does any city council member know the owners or any party in interest or have knowledge about this matter? That means you could not fairly and impartially hear the facts and decide the matter based on the evidence presented at this hearing. Next, I will ask for representatives of the parties in interest to introduce yourself, including your name, address, and position.
Good evening. My name is Carrie Folsom. I'm an attorney with Corday and Associates down in South Portland. We represent the mortgage holder, U.S. Bank, as well as Nation Star and Federal National Mortgage Association.
Are there any other owners of 808 Webster Street or the representative present tonight? Is another part? Oh, please step forward and introduce yourself, including name, address, and position.
Council, I'm Richard Doobie. I own the property next door to this building. And a year ago...
Public comment is not in order. Thank you, sir. We're looking for we're looking for owners of 808 Webster Street. This is not public comment at this time.
Oh, okay. I didn't hear it.
Yeah, not a problem. I invite you to take your seat. Is another party of interest present? Now, the procedures that the City Council will follow in conducting this hearing are as follows. Number one, any documents to be used in this proceeding will be marked as an exhibit. I accept into evidence the Planning and Code Enforcement Department's previously provided Exhibits A through K for 808 Webster Street. Number two, the presentation of evidence for the property will occur in the following order. City Planning and Code Enforcement Department staff will present an opening statement and relevant evidence regarding why they believe the structure at 808 Webster Street is a nuisance or dangerous building and what remedies the City Council shall order. Following the completion of the Planning and Code Enforcement Department's presentation, any party of interest will have an opportunity to present an opening statement and any relevant evidence they want the City Council to consider with regard to whether the structure at issue is a nuisance or dangerous building, and if so, what remedy the City Council shall order. Any party in interest can then ask questions of the Planning and Code Enforcement Department and any witnesses. The Planning and Code Enforcement Department can then ask questions of any party in interest and any witnesses they present. The Planning and Code Enforcement Department can then make additional comments regarding any party in interest presentation. Any party in interest can then make additional comments regarding the presentation of the Planning and Code Enforcement Department. City Council members can then ask questions of the Planning and Code Enforcement, a party in interest, or a witness. Each side can then make closing remarks of not more than 2 minutes each. Only parties to these hearings will be allowed to participate. Comments from the public will not be taken at this hearing. After all the information has been presented, the record will be closed. The City Council will then deliberate and take a vote on whether the structure in question is a threat to the public health and safety that requires prompt action. If the Council so determines, it shall deliberate and take a vote on the appropriate order to be made to remedy the situation. The City Council will deliberate and take a vote on whether the structure in question is a nuisance or a dangerous building. If the City Council determines that the structure is a nuisance or dangerous building, it shall deliberate and take a vote on the appropriate order to be made to remedy the situation. This is an administrative hearing and not a court proceeding or trial. Therefore, formal rules of evidence will not apply. As mayor, I will determine the appropriateness and admissibility of evidence on the advice of the city attorney. I now ask that the Lewiston Planning and Code Enforcement Department present the City Council with information relevant to this matter before it. Please continue, Director Ediger. Thank you.
Sorry, Mayor. Got a little jump the gun there. So the property at 808 Webster Street is identified as parcel ID RE941 on the City of Lewiston tax maps. A portion of the City of Lewiston tax maps and property information for that parcel ID is included in your packets as Exhibit B. On September 13, 2022, a notice of this hearing was recorded in the Androscoggin Registry of Deeds in Book 11206, page 223, a copy of which is included in your packets as Exhibit C. On September 21st, 2022, Lois Alquist was served with a notice of hearing, and that return of services in your packets as Exhibit E. On September 14th, 2022, U.S. Bank National Association, not in its individual capacity but solely as trustee for the RMAC Trust Series 2016 CTT, was served with a notice of hearing, and those returns of service are in your packets as Exhibit F. On September 16, 2022, Nation Star Mortgage LLC was served with a notice of hearing, and those returns are in your packets as Exhibit G. On September 19, 2022, Homeowners Assistance Corporation was served with a notice of hearing, and that return of service is in your packets as Exhibit H. On September 15, 2022, Portfolio Recovery Associates LLC was served with a notice of hearing, and that return of service is in your packets as Exhibit J. On September 1st, 2022, PEMCO Limited, a property manager that represents the Federal National Mortgage Association in code violation resolution matters, emailed our office to learn what it needed to bring the property into compliance. Federal National Mortgage Association does not have a recorded interest in the property and does not meet the legal definition of a party in interest, but the city attempted service on PEMCO because it identified itself as interested in bringing the property into compliance. However, the address for the Hawaii company's registered agent is in fact an unoccupied warehouse. PEMCO was served with notice of this proceeding by electronic mail, which is how it had contacted our office. Proof of this services in your packets as Exhibit I.
Good evening, councilors, Mr. Mayor. I am the City of Lewiston Code Enforcement Officer Nicholas Richard. My qualifications and certifications are located in your packets as part of Exhibit K. Brief qualification rundown is 14 years I have as a Maine certified code enforcement officer, and I'm also International Code Council certified building inspector. Now I'm turning to the conditions at the property. As you can see on this slide here, this is a picture from the outside at the front parking lot or driveway where there's overgrown vegetation. The appearance of blight is pretty visible. Construction demolition debris is strewn about, discarded car parts and household items. The appearance of blight and the abandonment attracts transients. They're looking for a place to squat and possibly causing further deterioration. It's a potential fire hazard due to the fire loading of these contents. And here we have a more current picture as of September 9th. Additional debris and items have been dumped in the driveway. Appears to not be from inside this structure. The property is becoming a dumping grounds for other transients or people in the area that know of it. The structure remains unsecured from unauthorized entry. As you can see on the picture on the right, the door is wide open. The odor was so immense when I was there, I could not enter the structure. I seriously peeked my head in and I almost tossed my cookies. You would need a Tyvek suit and full respirator mask if you were in that condition. It was probably 90 degrees that day. It's a severe health and safety hazard to anyone attempting to enter it due to the dangerous and unsanitary conditions. It's dangerous to life and property due to the inadequate maintenance, dilapidation, and abandonment. It is unsuitable for the use to which it is put. Again, this is another picture basically highlighting those issues. Here's a close-up picture of some of the trash and debris, construction demolition debris, continuing regarding the blighting conditions, nuisance due to the blighting and unsanitary conditions. Again, severe health and safety hazard due to these issues. Again, this is from the original inspection, June 7th of 2021. The door was not locked then. It is still not locked, as you saw in that previous slide. The window was shattered. So it's, again, a nuisance due to blighting unsanitary conditions. I'm saying this over and over again because this is a major issue. The public health and safety is at risk. Again, potential for squatters and other animals and elements to get into this structure, causing further deterioration. As looking into the records, public utility records, water service was disconnected last June, or June 2021, sorry. It's uninhabitable as plumbing system is not connected to the water supply. You cannot maintain sanitary conditions without proper water supply. The electrical service has been disconnected for over a year. As of September 22nd of this year, CMP has ordered the removal of the meter due to inactivity, and upon inspection today, we did verify that the meter has now been removed. And I do have pictures regarding that. Uninhabitable, basically this building is uninhabitable due to no working electrical system. Basically creates a hazard condition due to the lack of smoke detectors, required lighting and heating. As you can see in the picture, that toilet is empty, the water is dried up, and it's just not a pretty sight. Here's the bathroom, or the main entry on the left and the bathroom on the right. You can see that there's dirt, animal feces upon immediate entry into the structure and into that room. There's pet food, animal feces throughout the bathroom. It's a nuisance due to the unsanitary conditions. Severe health and safety hazard, again, due to these unsanitary conditions. This is a current picture of the interior. As you can see, trash and debris remain. Nothing really has been done to the interior of the structure. It's a severe health and safety hazard. Again, anyone attempting to enter this structure will run into these issues and basically put themselves at risk. Dangerous to life and property due to the inadequate maintenance, dilapidation, and abandonment. It's unsuitable for the use to which it is put. Another picture, this is the kitchen area and the living room area. You can see rubbish and trash throughout the structure, rotted food left on the counter. The odor inside is unbearable. And again, I'm going to hammer this one home. It is a nuisance due to unsanitary conditions. It is severe health and safety hazard due to these dangerous and unsanitary conditions. And here we have an outdoor view of what it looks like as of September 22. It's excessively overgrown with vegetation. I had to maneuver around tree growth to gain access to the deck. Again, this contributes to the blighting condition. There's debris strewn throughout the vegetation. You can kind of see that on the right picture. Nuisance due to the blighting and unsanitary conditions. This is just documenting the condemnation notice that was posted on June 8th of 21. Vacant or abandoned notice from June 24th of 21. That was from a property preservation company, and it was posted as maintained by a company out of New York, Brooklyn, New York at the time, Crown Field Services LLC. Again, this adds to that blighting condition, public health and safety hazard. It looks as though it's a nice inviting area for squatters. So in conclusion, this building qualifies as being dangerous. This building qualifies as being a nuisance. It is unsecured and unsanitary. It's unsuitable for the use to which it is put, and it constitutes a hazard to health and safety due to inadequate maintenance, dilapidation, obsolescence, and abandonment. It is dangerous to life and property. It must be demolished. These are a few more pictures that I've included at the end, if you wanted to go through real quick. Again, more trash and debris. These ones didn't come out as well. This is all from June 7th, June 8th, as I went to post it the next day. and then September 9th of 22. All right, so tonight, excuse me, the Code and Planning Department seeks an order for the structure to be secured and demolished. And we propose that you conclude that the structure has been unsecured for over 16 months and that poses a serious threat to the public health and safety. As such, we ask that you adopt the portion of our proposed findings of fact and conclusions of law to order the structure to be immediately secured. And second, we request that the council conclude that 808 Webster Street qualifies as a nuisance or dangerous building for the following reasons. The structure is abandoned, unsecured, and constitutes a fire and safety hazard as it attracts transients looking to squat. The amount of rotted food, animal feces, and debris throughout the exterior and interior of the structure creates an unsanitary condition, constituting a hazard to health and safety due to the inadequate maintenance, dilapidation, obsolescence, and abandonment. The animal feces and urine has caused mold, mildew, and other environmental organisms to grow throughout the structure, creating a toxic environment. This constitutes a health and safety hazard due to exposure to these organisms, creating unsanitary conditions. The amount of trash and debris throughout the structure creates a high fire hazard, or fire load, excuse me, due to the large quantity of combustible materials, increasing the threat of accelerated spread of fire. The structure is unsuitable for the use or occupancy to which it is put. The excessive debris and vegetation about the property creates hazardous conditions. The structure constitutes a hazard to health, safety because of inadequate maintenance, dilapidation, obsolescence, and abandonment. As such, we ask that you adopt our proposed findings of fact and conclusions of law and order the structure to be demolished. Any one of these reasons meets Maine law's standard for a nuisance or dangerous building. Together, they pose a greater danger to the public. And I also have, I would like to enter into evidence new pictures that I took today as Exhibit L. If you would like, I do have them if you want to see them.
I'm sorry, again, please.
I also have some pictures that I took today. I'd like to enter them into evidence as Exhibit L.
Yes, please, continue.
So I'll do a quick rundown here. This is outside. We went there today. We see that this couch is still out front. There's still some trash that's basically remains in place. This is the entry door. We did not touch that door. That was wide open, as you can see. There are more items. It seems like people have been getting inside this building, so things have been moved around, but nothing really has been cleaned up. This is inside the garage. I wasn't able to get in there before, but now I did. This here's the basement area. I did not get pictures of this originally. This is just a light fixture that's hanging by a wire. This is the trash in the hallway in the main living area. You can barely navigate through that. These are, I took this is basically the same picture I took from when I was first there. Nothing has changed in that room. Again, this is the kitchen, basically the same picture. That's today. That's also today, same view. That's the living room. This is the back area. They have cleaned up some of the grass growth, but this stuff all remains. This is the back door. It was secured on my September 9th visit. It is now not secured. It is open. This is the view inside that door. And as you can see, this is the kitchen area where I took the picture from the other angle, and there's a pile of trash in this area. And then this is the meter has been removed at this point. So there is no power. Thank you.
I would note that in one of the first pictures Nick showed there, they have mowed the lawn out there. So only as a result of this entire notice process that we've gone through has someone actually decided to mow the lawn. But again, the building remains secured on there. So the level of attention to this property still remains an issue.
Anything further?
Nope, that's it.
At this point, we'll give an opportunity to the party in interest to respond.
Thank you. Just to clarify for everybody who the players are, U.S. Bank National Association is the actual holder of the mortgage. Federal National Mortgage Association is the investor. They're the ones that underwrite or guarantee the loan, and NationStar is the servicer. So the only party that you'd really see a titled interest would be the U.S. Bank. Fannie Mae's just the insurer or investor that guarantees the loan, and NationStar is the one that handles the daily anything, that's needed on the loan. The entity that the gentleman mentioned, Crown Field Services, they are still the property preservation company, and they were out to the property last week. They were the ones that took the lawn down, and they didn't have, whatever you call those giant dumpsters, the huge ones that are like the size of a truck. They didn't have one big enough to take away all the refuse that was there. They took some. They had secured the property, but if it was unsecured today, that happened because they were out there last Wednesday. That happened within the past week. They did clean out some of the perishables from the refrigerator. They wanted to winterize, but because of the plumbing issues, they weren't able to because there's disconnects there. They are putting out bids with vendors because it was beyond the realm of what they usually deal with as a property preservation company to deal with, like he was saying, heavy-duty cleaning, pest remediation, and things of that nature, as well as the significant amount of personal property. We have to do a personal property, abandoned property notice before we can just sweep through and haul everything away. But Fannie Mae, as I'm sure most of you are familiar with them, their goal is home ownership and keeping properties on the market and usable and livable. And they really, their inspector thought that this property could perhaps be saved. I know I've been in front of you before with other properties that were so far gone that it would have cost more to rebuild them from scratch. But these folks believe that this can be remediated, and they'd like to have the opportunity to try and address the issues. Like I said, the Crown Field Services, they're based out of state, but they actually had folks on the property last Wednesday. They were able to do a little bit. They had secured it, but we would want to work perhaps with the city to see if we can come up with some sort of a plan to not have this property demolished. I've never heard from Mr. Nason either. I have no idea of his whereabouts. I had nothing in my file as to his whereabouts either, just.
Anything further?
I didn't have any further. Thank you.
Director, do you have anything to ask the party of interest?
Not necessarily a question, a comment that councilors have heard me made from previous hearings is ultimately, we don't want to have to demolish a building. There's a housing shortage everywhere. If we don't have to, that's great. A building can be saved. When we have someone who's unresponsive to a property for over a year out there, where clearly people are breaking into it, creating damage. If they hauled off material, it certainly isn't clear what's been done out there. It's great that they finally decided to winterize it again upon us notifying them and going through this whole exercise. Unfortunately, that seems to be a common theme when we come to you folks with dangerous buildings is nobody seems to respond until we engage the city attorney and start doing notices to everybody that might have an interest. As frustrating as it may be for those folks, it's more frustrating for us. It's certainly frustrating for the neighbors that have to see this and kind of question, why is this taking so long? I'm appreciative of Fannie Mae thinking that the property probably has life. I would say that most of the properties that we bring before you probably have life if you spend enough money. Whether that makes sense for this property, I'm not really sure at this point, but it continues to be a nuisance. It's a blighting influence, all the reasons that Nick indicated. At a minimum, it needs to be secured immediately and it should be followed through with a demolition.
Anything further?
I just wanted to kind of piggyback on what he said is, we haven't had any contact with any owner or party in interest this whole time. The only contact I actually had was, I should go back, I did have contact from Lois Alquist because she was going through personal issues with Joel. And I believe there was a divorce decree where Joel was supposed to sell the property. But that's another matter. But she was the only one that reached out to me. I haven't heard anything from Joel or any other party in interest. And she basically was trying to wash her hands of the situation because of that divorce decree. But like he said, these property preservation companies haven't been there all year. And now they're showing up to mow the lawn at the 11th hour, the bottom of the 9th. And that's just, that's a lot. That's how many of these go, is we get to this point and they start doing something. That's all I'd like to add.
Excuse me, your name again?
Mine?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Carrie Folsom. I'm actually a resident of the city of Lewiston, and I'm with Corday and Associates in South Portland. We represent the bank, U.S. Bank, Nation Star, and Fannie Mae.
Would you, do you have any questions for Planning and Code?
No, I didn't have anything further.
Comments or questions from the council for either of them? Councilor Pease?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the presentation, and thank you for all the hard work you did on getting this documentation together. Having past experience as a code officer, I know what you're up against. When I saw this coming up on the agenda, I went and took a peek for myself. Well, when you say you stuck your head in and you couldn't do any further, you did better than I did. I could smell it from outside, and it was, no matter where I walked on the property, the stench was there. I think it should be demolished, but on the same token, I kind of sympathize with the fact that we don't have housing, enough housing. But if we were going to do anything other than demolish, it would have to be done within a week, as far as I'm concerned. If it's not done within the week, it's coming down the following week. That's my opinion, and I thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Clement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This particular dwelling is in my ward. I've been on this since the summer of 2020, when I was made aware of it by an abutter. I've dealt with code and planning. Seeing this, nothing has changed over 2 years. I'm a firm believer that you have to set the tone, okay? In this particular case, if we allow them to come in, mow the lawn, and it hasn't worked to date. We have to set the tone. We have to move on these things. This is quite evidently a hazard. It's a fire hazard. It's a health hazard. I mean, I've been involved in this kind of stuff for many, many years. This building needs to come down, and I'd be in favor of demolishing the building. I realize we may have some legal quagmire to work through here that may delay us a little bit, but I say we get moving on it. We're coming up to winter, and, you know, it'll just be delayed again, and then we'll be dealing with it in the third year. Thank you.
Further comments from the council? Councilor Bees, did you have something to add?
Yes, I'd like to add that I think this property needs to be properly secured immediately. And if that means the city has to go in there and use its own resources to get it started, we should attach it to the property and get it done. Thank you.
Without further comment from the council, we will now have closing statements of 2 minutes each. Please continue, Planning and Code.
I don't believe we have any further comments at this point, other than we would support the council's action to have the building secured and demolished.
Oh, sorry. I don't really have too much else to add. Like I said, I'm a resident of the city of Lewiston. I live about 1.5 miles from this building. And Fannie Mae really would like the opportunity to try and save it. Unfortunately, just like everything else, pretty much everything stopped once the pandemic hit, and Fannie Mae and everybody else was precluded from doing almost anything. That's why the property sat untouched for so long. And it only came to our attention as counsel for Fannie Mae when this was noticed a few weeks ago, and we were able to get our people out there in about a week and a half to at least do what they could on a quick drop everything, go out there, see what you can do to try and secure the property and take down some of the lawn and get rid of some of the refuse, and then have them do a survey to see what they thought, if it was salvageable, if there's structural issues, or whether it's just the hazardous conditions. So Fannie Mae would really like to try and save the property. They're willing to act aggressively and quickly, and with code enforcement to come up with something that they think will work to avoid, as the counselors are saying, destroying a home here in Lewiston.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our city attorney would like to make a clarifying point.
I just wanted to clarify that because the owner, Mr. Nason, has not been served yet, and an order of demolition is not yet in order. The council can ask questions, of course, and as it has of the parties in interest. What may or may not be in order is whether to secure the property this evening.
Councilor Pease, did you, please continue.
I just have a question of council. If the bank that has a mortgage on this place, are they not the owners at this point? If they back their funding in that?
The statute differentiates between owners and parties in interest. And the definition for parties in interest is the same one in the mortgage foreclosure process. And so they're here in that regard. The difference is one of the remedies that code seeks is the ability to recover its fees, the cost of securing the building, demolition, and any other expenses. If it could do that through a special tax lien, which would prime the mortgages, and so that could affect all of the parties in interest in the owner. It also can pursue a collection action, which would be against the owners only. So that's one of the key significant differences.
Okay. Thank you.
So if I'm to understand correctly, Mr. Carey, so we cannot, a motion would not be in order to demolish the building, but we could have a motion to secure the building.
Yes, that's right. Once Mr. Nason is noticed, then he has the opportunity to come by and argue that it's either not a dangerous building or what action the council may make. So it should defer an action of what happens until he is noticed through the newspaper.
Councilor Scott.
Thank you. And what if he never comes forward?
The statute provides that if the address is not ascertainable, the city can effect notice by serving in the newspaper 3 consecutive weeks. After that happens, it's as if he was served by the sheriff, and if he doesn't come to that council meeting that was noticed, then he has notice is deemed to have been served on him, and the council can proceed.
Okay. Councilor McCarthy.
In this situation, I think where we can't demolish the building right away anyway, we put the parties of interest on notice that it has to be secured and completely cleaned up, and to our liking, or we will condemn it. I mean, that gives them 30 days, or at least 30 days, correct?
I think the code suggestion is that the council take this up again on November 1st.
Right, so they've got almost 4 weeks in order for them to do the work. That gives them, puts them on notice and see if they do the due diligence to salvage the property. They'll be aware of it, and then, obviously tonight we have to order that it be immediately secured because of the hazard that's involved in that. I'm sure there's kids in the neighborhood and all sorts of things that can go on in there that we don't want to happen. But aside from securing it, I think parties of interest have roughly 4 weeks to make us happy, or it goes away.
Councilor Pease.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is it possible that we start the notice proceedings right off in the paper and get that going as well as trying to notify him so that we can continue with this right off. We don't have to wait till November 1st to start the 3 weeks notifications and all this.
That's correct.
What we can do. Okay, thank you.
So, Mr. Carey, so it would, if I'm understanding things correctly, we can have a motion to immediately secure the building and then take this up again on November 1st after the 3 weeks of notice have been published in the paper?
Yes, that's right. And there's a proposed order to secure the building in your packets.
Councilor Scott?
Yes, just one more question. So the party of interest mentioned that they've already come by to do some pickup mowing and secure the building. I would be extremely concerned about the securing of the building because you were out there today.
Yes.
The back door is open, the front door was wide open, there were windows broken. I would be very concerned that we, even in the next 3.5 weeks before November 1st, that there's not going to be more people breaking in there using that. In some of those pictures, when you look at the coffee table in the living room, that looked like there was some paraphernalia and other things in there that possibly there's nefarious actions going on in an empty building that I think that could be dangerous to the building and dangerous to the neighborhood. And I would be really concerned about ensuring that the security of this building is tight enough to ensure that nobody's getting in there in the next few weeks.
At this point, we can take up this order.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Clement?
if I might, do we need to include in the order that we seek immediate service by publication?
The order includes, in paragraph 12 on the back, a finding that Mr. Nason's address is unknown or is not ascertainable with reasonable diligence. That's the standard in the statute, and then publication can proceed.
Okay. I mean, I think we've wasted over 2 years on this, so it's time to get moving.
Mr. Carey, so at this point, we can have a motion to accept this order?
To adopt it as.
Or right, okay. I guess at this point, if I could have a motion to adopt this order.
moved.
Councilor LaChapelle, seconded by Councilor McCarthy.
Mr. Mayor, if you wouldn't mind, if I could just read the motion into the record, the one that's pre-printed in your agenda packet, just for full clarification, if that's okay?
Thank you so much, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. With regard to the property at 808 Webster Street, to adopt the findings of fact, conclusions of law, and order of demolition proposed by the City Planning and Code Enforcement Department, which order establishes the corrective action to be taken by the property owner and the time frame for taking such action, and which authorizes the city administrator to take corrective action if the property owner fails to do so, and to recoup the city's cost through a special tax or collective action.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Further discussion before we vote? Mr. Carey, are we okay to proceed with the vote?
Yes, Your Honor.
Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carey. Madam Clerk, can you please tell me the next agenda item?
It is agenda item number 8,
Please proceed.
and I apologize, I had it corrected, thank you. Yeah, I left it at this place. Okay, I apologize, I apparently failed to keep a copy for myself of the corrected, I thought we put it in here, item,
Would you like the mayor's copy?
Yes.
Thank you so much, I'm so sorry. Let me put it in here. I apologize, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councilor McCarthy. Item number 8, public hearing and first passage regarding an amendment to the election ordinance to establish January 1st, 2023 as the effective date of the city ward boundary lines. Requested action that the proposed amendment to establish January 1st, 2023 as the effective date of the election ordinance regarding the city ward boundary lines approved by the City Council during their September 6th and 20th meetings receive first passage by a roll call vote, and that the public hearing on said ordinance be continued to the next regularly scheduled City Council meeting.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Councilor Pease, seconded by Councilor Clement. Discussion? Public comment on this agenda item? Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Council from Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5? Yes. Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I now have my agenda sheet, so agenda item number 9.
Item number 9, resolve approving the lease purchasing agreement with Bank of America Public Capital Corporation for the Johnson Control Incorporated Energy Performance Contract and authorizing the financial director to execute the necessary documents. Requested action to approve the resolve for the lease purchasing agreement with Bank of America Public Capital Corporation for the Johnson Control Incorporated Energy Performance Contract and authorizing the financial director to execute the necessary documents.
May I have
So
a
moved.
motion? Councilor McCarthy,
Second.
seconded by Councilor Harriman. Discussion? Councilor Pease?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The question is the guarantee on the work for the savings we're going to receive doing these repairs is going to basically self-pay for the repairs? And they guaranteed this?
The way the contract is structured, the savings that is reaped from the improvements will cover the lease payment. And as you recall during the presentation, any shortfall they absorb.
Okay. That was during the, is it in a lease agreement or contract agreement?
It is in the contracts.
Okay.
And the attorney has reviewed the contract as well as the lease agreement.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Public comment for this agenda item? Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Council from Ward 4?
No.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 6-1.
Agenda item number 10.
Item number 10, resolve authorizing, applying for, accepting, and appropriating a grant from the John T. Gorham Foundation for the purpose of funding Choice Neighborhood Implementation Grant personnel support and related activities. Requested action to approve the resolve authorizing the application for, acceptance of, and appropriating a grant from the John T. Gorman Foundation for the purpose of funding Choice Neighborhood Implementation Grant personnel support and related activities.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Councilor McCarthy, seconded by Councilor Jelinas. Assistant Director Parker, would you like to kick us off?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and councilors. Thank you so much for having me here tonight and considering this request to apply for staff funding through the John T. Gorman Foundation for our neighborhood development planner. Once we received the implementation grant for our Choice Neighborhood work and recognized the amount of work and other priorities of staff in the department, how to balance that, the John T. Gorman Foundation stepped up and offered to support this important work by providing funding for additional staff support. It funds one position that really helps with the day-to-day work and our responsibilities under this grant. Also, the position is tasked with other implementation aspects of our transformation plan, so not just what is covered with the implementation grant, so other strategies that are in the transformation plan that are priorities of the city. So that's working with businesses in the Choice neighborhood, working with property owners looking to invest, addressing challenges, identifying new partners to help with some of that work, so on and so forth. The position was funded, this is an annual grant, the position was funded already for a year. We have had Jacqueline Crusette, who many of you have met, in the position doing excellent work and really helping advancing work in the Tree Streets neighborhood and ensuring that we are meeting our requirements with the implementation grant and identifying other opportunities for the city through this work. The foundation has invited us again to apply for another year of funding, and so at this point we are looking for your support and authorization to apply for and accept that funding to help continue this work.
Thank you, Assistant Director. Discussion? Public comment? Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Council from Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Assistant Director Parker. Please tell Jacqueline thank you. Item number 11.
Item 11, to provide staff direction on the continuation of Cody Street Park project construction. Requested action to discuss and determine a course of action that provides direction to staff on continuing or staying the Cody Street Park conversion project and/or the future of the city-owned parcel.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Councilor McCarthy.
Second for discussion.
Second for by Councilor Clement. Director Bruncheck, would you like to give us an overview?
Sure. Last time we had a workshop, we talked about the parks and specifically the Cody Street Park, where there's a few residents that are concerned about vandalism or just concerns in the area. So we wanted to take a look at what was the money that was spent so far, and that has been $103,000. It's almost finished its design at this point. We wanted to look at a little bit more of the results of that survey and ramifications if we didn't do it. So again, there are some people who are concerned, but there's a majority of people that have responded that were for the park, still saying their concerns are valid. The capital program has already been approved for construction of this park. That's a rec conversion. That would be in the spring. And because it's a rec conversion, if we didn't do it, it puts us in jeopardy of being in non-compliance. This was a project that was approved by the state levels and national levels. We are in the process of doing a conversion within a conversion for another park that didn't quite make it because of wetlands. So we don't have those kinds of issues at this lot. But there is concerns, and we wanted to just take a pause and get some direction from the council. Do we want to continue with this project and bring it to planning board, or stop where we are right now? So I'm here to answer any questions. And
Councilor Jelinas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to, before I weigh in, I want to make sure I'm understanding. So we're $103,000 in on this project.
Correct.
The surveys that were sent out in combination with the meetings that were held, I'm hearing you say that the majority of folks expressed positive feedback about it.
yes, and we made some of the recommendations from the residents into the new design.
Right.
Following some of their concerns.
Yep, I was at one of those meetings. And then when you talk about, because this is conversion funds, rec conversion, and you talk about the fact that if we don't move forward with this, we're in jeopardy of non-compliance. Can you talk about what are the ramifications of that? What does that mean?
Sure. The parks funding that we got originally for this is 3 or 4 different parks grant programs for trails or parks.
Okay.
We currently have a project right now that's I think it's $180,000, that is for the Garceland Bog. So we're building trails in there. And money, there's, bridges and little pieces like that that are in there, similar to what would be done at Cody Park, actually. So that money would stop being funded, and you would have to reimburse it, because we're midway into that approval project. Other future projects down the road could be anything from additional trails along the riverfront to, improvements to parks. There's certain grants that allow you to improve existing parks, but this is a challenge with this rec conversion funding, is it doesn't let you improve existing parks. which seems logical, but they're trying to replace park space that was replaced, buildings were built on it, so they were looking for that same recreational quality, or equivalent, they call it. There's a land equivalent, and then there's a recreation equivalent. And it's hard to judge what those things are. So it does go through a pretty grueling process to get approved, and, needs to do that for every single project that we have.
May I continue?
Yes, and then I just have a quick clarifying question, but after you, in case we have the same question.
So to be in compliance, this would have to be completed by when, Director?
August of '23.
Okay. And when we talk about being $103,000 in already, and if, just hypothetically, this park location was changed, those funds that were expended are really specific to the site design at that spot.
Correct.
So none of that would be transferred. It would
No, it would
be
not.
starting over again. Okay. I just want to be clear
It
before
could be transferred to someone who might buy that lot, or for future use, because survey is survey. Wetlands, studies are wetland studies, so those pieces of it could go with the value of the land, whatever the city chose to do that.
Okay.
So there's pieces of it, but
Okay.
not the majority of it.
Okay. I'm just trying to understand all the details before I, okay.
And just to clarify, so we're getting, what's the entity that we get the grants from? Is it the National Park Service or?
National Park Service, correct. It's actually written in here, Department of Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry.
Thank you. And so we would be ineligible for future grants?
Correct. And ineligible for the grant that we have right now, we would have to pay that back.
Right, for the Garcelon Bog. Okay, thank you. Councilor Harriman?
Thank you. Thank you, Director Brenchick. So now that we're on the second choice of, we started with the Alfred Plord site, that didn't work, now we're on this one. I think you had mentioned there might be possible other sites available that we could do this. Are there any that are still feasible?
There are. So the second one that we're looking for to replace Alfred, because we needed to do two parks, was No Name Pond. There is some opposition to that. I think in my parks presentation for the workshop, I let you know I anticipate opposition with each park has its own particular hurdles to overcome. So we have heard from one of the three abutters so far on No Name Pond that is again concerned about some of the same things. They've had no activity there. They haven't had problems with their camps. It abuts some private land around the lake. A private road is the end of that road. Bradbury Street turns private at the end. That it would bring additional traffic to that area. So we have gotten a long letter of opposition from one of the three abutters, who happens to, be president of the association. So we're kind of a little hesitant about that one now, kind of looking at the second one was the end of East Avenue. It's a reservoir that we own. We have storage of materials at that area right now, and it abuts Thorncraig. Again, some opposition from Thorncraig. I know they have pretty particulars for their park. It's a beautiful park, and there's no dogs, and they have some control and, very well run, I believe. So they may or may not, but that's what probably is at that end. And then the third project is Island Point, and that's part of the Riverfront Master Plan update, and as many of you know, it's in shambles. So there's nowhere to go but up on that project, but it's millions of dollars to do something there for recreation. I think within the master plan, we'll get some ideas. I'm not sure. So those are the three lots that we had identified. City-owned properties.
Yeah, so if this Cody Street Park didn't go ahead, we still have to create two new ones?
Well, the value of those two. So we do have a call into the state director, who was at a conference this week, so couldn't get back to us with an answer, but whether, if we did something like Island Point, that's going to need to be a more expensive park, something, extreme sports, something. Would he consider that as a replacement for the two that we need to do? We don't have an answer on that yet. It's a possibility. It's just, most of you know that site. There's a demolished building there. It needs some cleanup. And then it's a sharp bank overlooking the falls, which is beautiful. So beautiful but difficult site.
Yeah. And one last question. And then what is the estimate on being able to complete those things by the August 2023 deadline?
So the Cody Street Park, I have no doubt, could be done before August. The second one would need this is why we're doing the public process on it first. You need to put in a full application of having a conversion within a conversion. So then that paperwork goes to the state to get approved, which we've already talked to them about it, and then it would go to the federal level. So it could take a year or two, we're hoping a year or less, to get reviewed, and then we'd put it in our capital budget to put it in, to get it in. So we'd have 2 years after it's approved at a national level.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilor LaChapelle?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. How much money was the grant from the Park Service?
Originally, like what we're trying to replace, or?
Yes, well, what, right now, just for the Cody Street Park?
Oh, for the Cody Street wasn't a grant, okay? We're using all of our own city capital funding for Cody Street because it's replacing an area that did get grant funding that we put Connolly Elementary School on.
Okay.
So we don't have grant money for the rec conversions. We have grant money for Garceland Bog, which is a different park project. We're expanding a trail over there.
So how much money are we getting for Garceland Bog?
I believe it's 180.
180,000.
I think so.
So am I to understand, and I'm jumping around.
Not exactly
that
sure.
we've budgeted $521,000 for the Cody Park
Construction, correction.
construction.
Construction, yeah.
We also bought the piece of land.
We bought a piece of land for $6,000 and some change in the middle of that lot to get a continuous piece of parcel.
And how much money annually do we receive from the Parks Department for parks?
For grants in general?
Grants or whatever the case may be.
I'm not sure if it's been every year because I've only been here 2, but I know that we have gotten 2 grants in a row for that approximate value, 100,000, 180,000, somewhere in there. There's some match funding to that, probably 20%, I'm not sure exactly.
So follow my very simple math just for a second. 180,000, 180,000 is still far shy of the 521,000 that we would spend on that park. So why agitate everybody? Don't take any more grant money. We're still up $200,000 by not accepting grant money from the federal government.
Into perpetuity.
Forever?
Yes.
Never get it again.
Well, I'm fine with not having any more parks in the city. We have enough parks. We have plenty of parks. I'm all in favor of the Riverfront Master Plan. And I'm frankly, we get a $180,000 grant from the government, and we have to put $500,000 more into it. It's enough with the parks. So I'm in favor of just stopping the program, or if we want to take the money and put it towards the riverfront, I'm all set with that. I think that is a good compromise. I think that would be a shining star for the city of Lewiston in the future. It's going to take some time, but enough with the parks throughout the city. I live next to No Name Pond. I don't need to walk and go to the park. I walk out of my house and I go into the woods. I'm blessed that I have that ability. The people that live in the tree streets have parks right around them. 80% of the city of Lewiston is wooded. We have enough parks. And again, looking at the map, being fiscally responsible, don't take the money or switch it over to that side. I'm not in favor of Webster Street, East Avenue, up with the old
reservoir site.
Reservoir. Definitely not in favor of old No Name Pond. So for me, it's either the riverfront or don't take it forever. I'm fine with that. We'll save some money. Thank you.
And just for clarification, Director Brenchick, so the two, the spending of the 521 and then the 180 that we received for Garceland Bog, those two things are not linked, correct?
No, they're not.
Yeah. Can you explain why we're needing to do park conversions in the first place?
Sure. When the property was chosen for the elementary school and they looked at a number of different properties, there was grant money that went into that, and there was other properties that they had a pool on them. There were leases that were running out. I think it was the Catholic Church had 2 different lots. One was tennis courts, one was a pool, just kind of went over this with Megan today. So there was some parks that leases were running out, and we wanted to cancel those as well, that had grant money put into them. So there was 2 or 3 different sites that had been repurposed, and that's not allowed in the grant funding process. If you accept 50,000, you accept 10,000, you accept 180,000, you're guaranteeing that to be a park for your community forever. Good thought to begin with, but as we look at whatever urban development, economic uses, is it always the best use of that piece of land that you know today? I'm not sure we know that about a piece of property all the time. We can put lands in conservation, but that's not what it is. So when we put those buildings up, we had to replace the land value and the recreational value. So the land value is pretty straightforward. We get that from our assessors. We know what that is. That's a pretty black and white number. The recreational value is not. It comes under the judgment and scrutiny of the state level and the federal level. So, you know, there's 2 levels of park service that say you had an above-ground pool. While it was only above ground, it wasn't that nice. While it was a pool recreation for the community. Tennis courts, they might have been beat up. They could have been brand new. It didn't matter. You had used grant monies to repair them. You promised to keep it a park forever. So those are the rules as they stand today. I know that there's a lot of effort in trying to change those rules, and we're working on that. Our city administrator is working with other communities and our legislators to kind of look at that program to say it should be to improve the parks we already have. We would put the conversion money into the parks that we already have. So the rules are, you know, changing rules in a system at a national level might take some time, but that certainly is a direction that needs to happen. And so when you get a conversion, like, those approvals take years. And they didn't have a public process for the 2 that were chosen, Alfred Ployd and Cody Park. We're sorry about that. Public process has been much more in the forefront, and we're glad for that. And it's never perfect, but we try to do better at that. So if you look at an option of like Alfred Ployd needing a conversion within a conversion, there is an option. We put both of those parks in that application for a conversion within a conversion. It's going to cost money to put that application together, but that could go forward, and that is due before the end of August. So you have to do something that's gotten to the state level before that August deadline to not jeopardize that perpetuity of event, you know, grants forever. So that's another option that's out there that we just talked about today. I don't know if the state will approve that. We tried to get a litmus test from them, and we really couldn't get that before I met with you. But that's an option, and that still gives it some time period for the discussions about changing the rules of this program, having any traction, I guess. So that might give it time. So you could either redo that rec conversion with adding 2 of those projects, or just stopping it and saying, we can't do this. We're not going to do it. We're choosing not to, you know, continue to meet this expectation, and we won't apply for grants. You know, so there's 2 different scenarios there, but that's how the conversion is. And for those of you listening, the workshop that we did to detail that in greater detail than what I just gave for an overview. If you want to look back to that council packet, you could get the details on it. But
Thank you, Director Brenchek. Yeah, I'd be deeply concerned about putting us in a position where we lost access to future grants, like basically in perpetuity until we came back into compliance. Councilor Clement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to ask the director, or somebody here can tell me whether the director received a copy of the email the council received as a public comment. I believe it was this morning concerning the public process.
Yes, that was forwarded. She did.
Okay. The person that wrote this email, and I don't have it in front of me, but my recollection is that it found fault with the public process that was used. It was kind of a negative on the process that if you approved of anything, you could just tick a box. If you disapproved, you had to write a narrative. This person said that they had not seen anything, had not heard of any of the public process. I'm concerned that we engage in something that's like a push-pull, if we're trying to push people toward something. My other concern is that during that workshop, we heard, or at least I heard, correct me if I'm wrong, We have a number of parks and properties out there that we can't take care of now. Why are we adding another 14 acres to the mix? Thank you.
Councilor McCarthy?
My concern in all of this is that it seems like this is, I mean, the first time I heard any negative on this was a month ago, which is kind of late in the process. Now, I don't know if that was due to people just not understanding the process, or if a couple of neighbors got together and said, hey, we don't want this, and stirred up a little animosity against the park. I don't know. That $103,000 that's been spent so far, that's part of the $521,000 for the total?
No. There was $180,000 in design for Alfred Ployd and Cody.
Oh, okay. So we still got to spend another $521,000?
If we move forward with it.
If we move forward, okay. But yeah, I think with an August deadline, the lateness of everything, I don't think we have a choice but to move forward with this. So that's my opinion. I mean, I understand where the neighbors are coming from. I think they may have got shortchanged a little bit on their input, but I also think that they sort of waited till the last minute to voice their opinion against it. So as much as I hate to go against city residents and what they feel, we've had, I think that we have to move forward. Thank you.
Councilor Scott?
Thank you. Could you remind us again what you said that you had hoped that you would get information on today, but that didn't come in?
Absolutely. One of the options out there for us is to take Cody and Alfred Ployd and put them in the rec conversion within a conversion application, which means send it back up to, the state and the national levels to say, would this work? And the only thing that we can replace that with city-owned properties that we're looking at that is approved by the system that has never been a park before, so it can't be improving a park, would be Island Point. And Island Point is, luckily, part of the Riverfront Master Plan update. So that's one of the areas that we're looking at to say, what does the community want us to do with this?
So, if I may, Mr. Mayor.
Let's continue, Councilor Scott.
So when you get that information, could that possibly the state would be possibly, I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. The state would be possibly giving you to be able to use Island Point instead of the Cody and the Alfred Ployd,
right.
the two together. And how long do you think it would take to get this information? I know you tried today, but.
I think the piece is that when it goes through the master plan update and we do the 3 different public meetings, at least even the first or second public meeting, it's going to be about January. So we have to develop what would be the scope of that. What would it look like? Is it a climbing wall? Is it a zip line? What is it? What is the extreme sport or some other kind of sport that we could put into that as an urban park? It has really high recreational value because it's unique. Mm-hmm. The land value is valuable because it's in town, so it's a smaller lot, but it has higher value as an in-town lot and something unique as a feature of an urban park that isn't around, is unique. So we had talked about it originally with Doug Beck, who was the director at the state level. We're just not sure how it would run. You have to do the application to get a final answer. So we wouldn't have a final answer, but we could certainly get the application in before the August deadline, which is what we'd need to do.
So I personally feel that I would be in favor of doing that and finding out if that can be done. I was very concerned about that email that we received today. I thought that there were good suggestions in there about reducing the size of the parking lot, the lights in the neighborhood, the concern about the lights. And I don't feel that that was the first thing we've heard from this neighborhood about their concerns about this. I feel that we heard already from public comment here that there were community members that felt that the process itself was not quite the way they felt that they were part of that process. So I think that we need to make sure that moving forward in anything like this, we need to ensure that our public is feeling like they are part of the process. I will add, though, that I do think that public parks are extremely important in our community. And I understand that Lewiston is surrounded by woods, but I will tell you that there are a lot of woods that are not publicly available. They are private owned, and some people can't get to go out and do some of those things. I would prefer that this park be put where we're now suggesting for part of the riverfront, because I think that that would be a phenomenal asset for our community. It would help with our economic development. It would help with everything that we have for our strategic plan. So I would be more in favor of waiting until we found out about that before we make a decision to move forward with this.
Councilor Jelinas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Cody Street Park is in Ward 7, just up the street from me, very, very close to my home. And, I've had the opportunity to attend one of the public meetings. I've had an opportunity to read many emails from my constituents. And I had the opportunity to watch, the public comment here. I was absent that night. Initially, I really was kind of excited, actually, about Cody Street Park, and was really impressed with the plans outlined by Megan when she came to the meeting. But I'm a strong believer, as a city official, that, we have to listen to public comment. We have to really take what our folks are offering up, and we've had, heaven knows, lots of opportunities where that's happened, right? And I think that we need to listen. And I feel like, people have spoken, and I know there's been concern shared too about the process. I'm cognizant of that. I would be in support of us revisiting the potential rec conversion to one project, the Island Point. I too am not interested in jeopardizing our ability to, forego grant funds coming in from the national parks. So I think somehow keeping this moving would be important. But that would be how I would vote on something, or how I'd direct the city at this point.
Director Brenchick, if I may. So Island Point, is it slated to be a park, or was it going to be something else?
We had just put it on as a city-owned lot, following all the criteria that it had never been a park before, into the third on the list of lots that were potentials. And then when we looked at the Riverfront Master Plan update and extending the walkway underneath the bridge into the Veterans Memorial Park, you land right there. So what do we do there? How do we make a nice transition into the rest of the walkway heading up towards Sunnyside? So we need to look at what that area is. There's a small piece of private property. That was a building that was demolished out front, but a good portion of it is the city's property.
Right. I guess my only concern, yes, I'll reiterate that I don't want to put the city in a position where we lose access to future grants. I just feel that's short-sighted. I guess my only concern with this piece of property at Island Point, there's already Veterans Park that's right there. There's some Art Payne right there. And so are we thinking about doing basically a park at Island Point just to, because we're out of spaces left, or is this the highest and best use for that piece of property at Island Point? Does that question, would you like to speak to that, Director Brunchick?
Well, I think, Lincoln's into this discussion as well as, looking at a potential building being there, a hotel, whatever that might be. There's issues with environmental concerns, but it's not unbuildable. It's just going to have issues, just like every project that we put forward. You're going to have hurdles that you need to overcome. So I am not saying that it's the best use, but it is part of the Riverfront Master Plan public process right now. And we'll know that outcome. We'll know that outcome before we need to submit this application. And it will cost something to do that application and submit the conversion within the conversion, but well within the budget that we have left.
Thank you, Director Brunchick. And you bring up an excellent point. We're in the Riverfront Island Master Plan right now, and yes, I would like that process to, continue, without, to be able to continue on its own without, a piece of property, being predetermined what its outcome will be. Administrator Hunter, would you like to add something?
Yes, I would also add that that parcel has been looked at for development in the past, and has proven to be extremely challenging with the soils that are there, some of the parking, and probably the biggest issue is access from a traffic study standpoint. So that makes it extremely challenging from that perspective to put something that probably is a better use of that parcel at that location. So
You mean
this-
like a structure?
Correct.
Right, okay.
Whether, to the director's point, a hotel, restaurant would be a little bit easier, but you still have the traffic mitigation that you're going to have to deal with. And so that at least addresses, the park as another option. And if I could, since we brought up the Riverfront Island Master Plan a number of times during this discussion, I would remind not only the council, but the viewing audience, we are having a public process at Callahan Hall next Wednesday from 5 to 7 to talk about the Riverfront Island Master Plan. It's an open house format, so there's no formal presentations. There's 5 stations that you go and you get the opportunity to provide your input. There's also a website available that you can sign up for to not only hear about the project, but also kind of stay informed as the project matriculates through the process. So it gives me the opportunity to make that plug too. Thank you.
I appreciate that, Administrator Hunter. Thank you very much. Councilor McCarthy, would you like to add something?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Director, at what point, if we paused Cody Park, at what point would we have to make a decision to move ahead or kill it?
I would say probably February, March at the latest.
Okay,
So
so
that we
we
can either
could,
finish design and get it under construction or submit the other application.
we don't have to make a decision right now as far as we could pause it and then move forward with the other opportunities to see if they're feasible, but still stay on track to make the deadline if we have to.
Correct.
Okay, I like that, thanks.
Councilor Clement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In my business, we had what was known as enforcement tolerance, I believe. Deputy City Administrator knows what I'm talking about. I think we as councilors have to engage in public tolerance. We can't go against the public that we serve. And I'm hearing loud and clear that they don't want this. I have one gentleman that spoke about Cody Park, and I can appreciate this. He says, you put a playground out in the middle of the woods, what could possibly go wrong? Yeah, I can tell you what could go wrong, but I won't get graphic with you. I think we need to pause this. I think Island Point is a great idea. I mean, we're trying to develop the city around the river. It is probably one of our biggest assets. And, I think it makes sense. Put in something out there in extreme, I believe you described it as extreme sports or something like that.
It's a thought.
A thought. I mean, I've always wanted to try a zip line, so, I would have to watch.
We could rent
who's
it out
on
to
either
companies,
end of that when I was on it.
Councilor LaChapelle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just quick question for you and one other comment. We haven't gotten to public comment yet, have we?
That's correct. We're still discussing.
And I guess I'm one with simple math, folks, and I know saying we don't want to jeopardize never being able to receive park money again. But if park money comes that we receive a grant for $100,000 and we have to spend $700,000, it doesn't balance out. I'd rather forego the $100,000 and save the $700,000. So for me, it's simple math. I think we have enough parks. I agree with the mayor's statement earlier. On that Island Point, it'd be a real great place to have a restaurant. That'd be real cool. No question about it, that would be good. But in lieu of another suggestion, the least impactful site out of the 3 that she spoke about, the director spoke about, would be the old reservoir up at the top. That's the least impactful of any of them. So I would be inclined to either I'm not quite sure the procedure-wise of what you're looking for, if you're looking for a vote or not. Either we continue looking at the island section and hold everything off, or I just kill it altogether. So obviously, this is gonna come for a vote, it looks like, for stopping the Cody Street Park and, is that?
Well, at this point, or, sorry, please, anything else, Councilor LaChapelle?
That's it, thank you.
Okay. Well, and thank you for your reminder, Councilor LaChapelle. At this point, I will go to public comment. Is there anybody wishing to publicly comment?
Good evening. My name is Katie Krantz, and I live on Cody Street. I have so many concerns about this park that you'd like to build on our street. I've been told that you folks recently had a meeting as early as this morning or sometime yesterday regarding homeless people in the Sunnyside Park. So this may now be coming into our neighborhood. Some of the photos that you folks may have recently received from Larry Gilbert Sr. that he sent out on October 2nd, Cedar Street, Center Islands, overgrown weeds on Russell Street, the front of the Armory, the park on Farwell, on Webster Street. So this park will just be another name on that list. You might ask why I'm saying this. It's because the city has grant money to spend. It doesn't matter that you have the money, but you don't have the people that's going to maintain the parks. Look at all the parks that we already have, and we're not maintaining them. So it's going to be another one that we're putting up, and we're not taking care of it. You speak about this survey that people filled out. Well, I can tell you that it's wrong. People had to answer the questions in great detail. It wasn't a simple yes or no. When you go to the polls, it's a yes and it's a no. It's as simple as that. Maybe if we do another survey and you do a yes or no question, you might find that you get better answers in your survey. One of the things that people were saying is that they were willing to travel 15 to 20 minutes to come to this park. Seriously? Hopefully the city can find time to hire more staff that's going to maintain the park. If not, in 6 months, it's going to look like a very seriously overgrown jungle because it's not going to be maintained. Wondering when the city staff members that attended the meeting are actually going to start having communication with us again. After the meeting, it was great. We got a few emails, but I guess the emails don't work anymore because we don't get communications. Councilor McCarthy, you asked about them reaching out to us. We found out about the meeting that was taking place in this park through TV. I then had to reach out to our ward rep and ask what was going on. We were informed about this supposedly being in the works for years. I've had my house for 20 years, never knew of it. Someone needs to help us and not have this park go in place.
Further public comment? Yes, I do understand that city hiring has been, or hiring for city positions has been challenging, and I'm hopeful that in the future it will become easier. Councilor Harriman.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify with Director Brenchick the amount, if we would have to spend, I think it's another, what, 300,000 something to complete this project to remain in compliance with receiving those grants. But it's not just for this year, correct? It's for perpetuity. So we would spend, what, 300 something thousand in order to continue getting this $100 to $180, $200,000 each year. It's not just like 300 versus 100 one time, correct?
So Councilor LaChapelle tried to put these two together, but they're two very different packages. Okay, one's the rec conversion that we need to do regardless of the grant that we already got, stands by itself. We had $180,000 to do the design for those two parks. The first one had too many wetlands issues. The second one's almost designed, so we spent about 103 out of that 180. We can put a stop to that, but we've spent 100. We also have budgeted $521,000 to build Cody Street Park. We don't have to spend that. We could reallocate it if we could, if we chose to. The grant money in itself as a separate category is in perpetuity. We don't know what grant we'll get each year. We could get $1 million grant one year, $100,000 one year. Depends what our goals are and where it fits into that program. But as the director, I certainly do not support putting that in jeopardy forever. So working with the state to say, this is what we've tried, is a better method, even if we're stretching it out in time, giving our administrator time to look at that other opposition, which is multiple communities with this challenge, not just Lewiston. There's multiple communities with this, for the rules to change and for it to be able to go into existing parks. We couldn't count the pickleball court, which is another brand-new park that we're building, because it was already in our capital plan. So we tried to do that as well. So that they're two different buckets. And again, you could do the math of $100,000 a year, and after the 7th year, the 8th year, you're back up on top again. But we don't know. You know, it's just more of not burning that bridge. And I guess working in compliance is doing what we say we're going to do. And I think that's important. I think it's important to continue to work with the state in good faith. And we will communicate with them that there's concerns from the residents. This is what we're seeing. We could also hold a public meeting for the reservoir site to get a feel for what might be concerns there without a design, but an open discussion with the butters of that parcel if you wanted me to. So again, looking for direction. Just hearing a little bit of putting the Cody Street on pause. Don't need to make a permanent decision yet because we've done some design, and possibly continuing with some public process with the other choices of the lots that we have. We're already doing that with the Island Point. I could host a meeting for, we pretty much know where the no-name pond lands. We could do that public meeting as well as one for the reservoir. I feel like we kind of know the opposition that's going to happen at the lake, so moving to the Thorncraig residents and the residents on East Ave that would be abutting that reserve site. We could do that and have that all done before, the February, March kind of deadline of putting in an application. Would have an opportunity to talk to the state, to give them a little bit more information. That's going to probably be more than one phone call for him to come down and see it, think that through. I think he's talked positive about that site being developed for, a unique park. So it's not new to him.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Clement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've had discussion, we've had public comment. I would like to move that we lay this item on the table and direct staff to move forward with complete investigation of Island Point and its suitability for replacement of this.
We have a motion and now a second. Madam Clerk, can we go to discussion on this motion?
You can. If I could just ask Councilor Clement just to repeat that motion again for me, if you could, please.
Yes, ma'am. I move that we lay this on the table and direct staff to move forward with investigation of the Island Point idea.
If I may, Councilor Clement, there's been some concern expressed with, there's currently a public process happening with Island Point. If we can direct staff to investigate the other possibilities, yes, including Island Point, but open up to the other sites as well, for instance, the reservoir.
Knowing that there will be opposition to a couple of those sites, my motion is specific to Island Point. I'll leave it at that, sir.
Did you get that, Madam Clerk?
Yes, I did. Thank you. So basically to lay on the table and to direct staff to move forward with investigating the Island Point option.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Are you still seconding Councilor Clements or Councilor LaChapelle?
Yes.
Okay. Further discussion before we vote? Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 4,
Yes.
Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6,
Yes.
Ward 7,
Yes.
Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you, Director Brenchick. Reports and updates.
Oh, yeah.
Councilor Scott?
Thank you. We did have a school committee meeting last night. It was a fairly quick meeting. We reviewed and had our first reading on several policies that were in relation to school committee member orientation, school committee member development opportunities, school committee freedom of access law training, also the job description for the superintendent, our evaluation of the superintendent, and school committee relations with the media. We also removed some policies that were no longer in effect or actually were more like double policies with the same language in one that only needed to be in one particular policy. That was around the superintendent's evaluation, school building administration, and school administration defined. We also got word last night that we received a grant for mobile labs, which was a great thing to get. We're going to be getting 15 mobile labs that are going to help in the different schools in respect to, these are labs for computer sciences, for I'm sorry, I don't know the exact language and I apologize.
Like STEM?
Yes, like STEM, but it's also more computer-related and what's available for out there in business and sciences and computer lab studies for businesses that are out there and what they're looking for. So this was exciting. There was actually an article in the paper this morning with a little bit more description on that. And then we also received, oh no, that was it. Like I said, it was a very quick meeting last night.
Further?
So, sorry, one more thing. I did have one more
Please
thing. I
continue,
apologize.
Counselor
The
Scott.
superintendent got his recertification for being a superintendent and went through the whole process and got recertified about a week ago. So I think that's an important piece also. That's where we're at.
Congratulations to our superintendent. Further updates, reports from the council? Councilor Harriman.
Thank you. Just a quick update from the Complete Streets Committee. It's a joint Lewiston and Auburn committee. We discussed several different things, but the pertinent Lewiston items, there are going to be some pedestrian-related improvements to the corridor, basically on Sabatis Street from Oak Street to approximately Wood Street. Some improved crosswalks and pedestrian bump outs to make crossing a little safer there. There's also going to be a paving project coming up, a main DOT project, paving Main Street from the Longley Bridge up to Strawberry Avenue that will include revamping all the sidewalk ramps to be ADA accessible. And there will also be the crosswalks with the rapid flashing beacons on Main Street at the Looking Ahead Clubhouse, and another one at Montello Street. I believe it's Montello and Landry is the intersection across Main Street, just to help provide some safer options for pedestrians to cross Main Street. And that's all I've got.
Further updates?
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry.
Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Just our tradition is in meetings leading up to Election Day, we just like to give some brief updates for election reminders for folks that may still be watching. So an election update for tonight is that absentee ballots are available. We mailed out 1,457 absentee ballots today to the voters who have been submitting requests. We've had to hold those requests until we receive the absentee ballots from the state. We received them late last week. So we were able to mail out almost 1,500 absentee ballots today. So folks will be seeing those in their mailbox within the next couple days or so. And folks can come in and request an absentee ballot, pick up an absentee ballot, anything that they need from the city clerk's office. And then October 13th will be the kickoff of the early voting polling place in the council chambers, and that'll run until November 3rd. So the city's doing some outreach and publicity on that to let folks know, but we also wanted to announce that tonight as well. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Bless you. And, without further updates, any new business or Administrator Hunter?
Just a clarification, Mr. Mayor, if I could. On agenda item number 11, it was actually to provide direction on Cody Street. So I just want to make sure the vote you took infers that we are staying the Cody Street project at this point.
We're laying it on the table, yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure that that was clear for all parties. Thank you.
Thank you, Administrator. Councilor LaChapelle?
Yes, other business. I know we did not get a chance to hear from Director Hediger about the second phase on the recovery houses.
Right,
I
yes.
also question whether we should be looking at, and I excuse my lack of the proper terminology, somebody like John Murphy Homes that are opening up these homes. They're buying a residential house someplace, and they're just putting a lot of people with special needs or whatever the case may be. They have caseworkers. Is this something that is covered or governed by code? Is this not a business that is being done in a residential area? And should we be looking at that at the same time as the recovery ones? I know in my recently, Councilman McCarthy and myself have been out knocking on doors, and I've come across quite a few of them that I didn't even know was there. I said, wow. So the question is it currently covered? Does it need a permit? Shouldn't we know about it? So those are a couple of questions I'd have for staff, and hopefully follow up on that.
Yes, our initial guess is that it's licensed by the state, but we will definitely confirm that and bring that in as part of the workshop to at least discuss.
Even if it's licensed by the state, shouldn't we know
Yeah.
that is a home? Shouldn't some of the neighbors know? And here's the other question. It is a business, and a business is now being run out of a residential area. And is it zoned for it? So that's just questions. I don't want to open a can of worms, but maybe that's something we should be looking at also. So that's one of the concerns. The other one, just I guess I should have done this under updates. Last Thursday, Councilman Harriman and myself had the pleasure of riding with Lewiston's finest throughout the city. It was an enjoyable time. I had a great opportunity to discuss with some of the patrol officers, some of the concerns that they have, not just on the job, being a police officer, some of the frustrations that they receive, that they have, and are afraid to voice some of their concerns, that at some point, I think in the 1st of January, I might have the opportunity to voice some of those concerns with the council. So, but we both got to ride. We came back unscathed. I was looking forward to some action, but it was a pretty dull night.
Councilor Clement, did you have something?
New business, are we now, sir?
Yeah, we're on 13 now.
Very briefly, I would like to, in the future, engage us in a discussion having to do with solar arrays. Last week, Deputy City Administrator and I attended I guess you might call it the inaugural meeting of this Legislative Policy Committee for MMA, Maine Municipal Association. We're seeing more and more of these under 5 megawatt. I mean, everyone's putting up a 4.999 megawatt solar array, and we lose the tax money. The state picks up the property tax and reimburses us by 50%, I believe. we don't get any excise tax. One case in point here, we have one development in Lewiston, $11 million worth of equipment. We don't get a penny on it. So I think we need to discuss that a little bit. Not only that, but I'm hearing from different people, there's been a couple of projects recently. I've heard from people in those neighborhoods that, you know, they think they're just plain ugly. I'm not gonna ring in on that, but I think it's a discussion we as a council need to have and see if we need to develop some type of a policy going forward. Perhaps, I'll mention this word, there's not too many people here, moratorium, until such time as we can develop a policy. Because they're coming up, we got ones coming up in my ward. I've received 3 telephone calls. People have heard about it. I had heard nothing. I talked with planning and code. They'd heard nothing, and then they got back to me about 3. Oh, yeah, as a matter of fact, somebody just came in. And this is another one of those things that's going to take up some really nice prime roadside property. I would think the people that live in this neighborhood are going to be faced with these, you know, giant mirrors that they'll be looking at, and they're not going to be too happy about it. And the only one that seems to make out on that is the person who develops the solar array. They get the money from selling the power. They don't have to pay the taxes, the state, you know. It's just something I think we need to look at. I think it's something that we could perhaps harness some revenue from. Thank you.
Further updates? Councilor Scott?
Is this updates or new business?
Sorry, new business,
Thank
right?
you.
We are on 13.
I just want to remind everybody that it's starting to get very cold out right now. I hope that now that we have an ordinance in place, that we still continue to have and make it a focus on what we can do to help our folks that are living outside. That's all. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, next agenda item.
The next agenda item is executive session to discuss a legal matter with the city attorney. Requested action to enter into an executive session pursuant to Maine Revised Statutes annotated Title I, Section 4056E, to discuss a legal matter with the city attorney.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Councilor Clement, followed by Councilor Pease. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Councilor from Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Good night, Lewiston.